Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Anna Walsh. Anna Walsh was born on April 18, 1983, in Belgrade, Serbia. She grew up in a cultured family alongside her younger sister. Anna attended the 5th Belgrade Gymnasium, where she distinguished herself as an outstanding student. She then pursued higher education at Belgrade Research University, the oldest and largest university in Serbia, focusing on foreign languages. She earned a master's degree in French language and literature. At 22, Anna graduated and decided to explore new opportunities in the United States, with her family's full support. In 2005, she began her American journey and settled in the U.S. with the goal of advancing her education in hospitality management. She took on administrative positions at renowned hotels, including the Inn at Little Washington in Virginia, which is part of the prestigious Relais and Chateaux collection. Anna's friendly nature, approachability, and strong sense of responsibility helped her quickly rise in her career, earning the respect of her colleagues and managers. Anna was multilingual and skilled at resolving conflicts, which helped her easily connect with others. She was well-liked by her colleagues and had a group of friends. Anna took every opportunity to shine in her career. She became a U.S. citizen while keeping her Serbian nationality, earned a high income, and invested in her own home and car. Her travels expanded her perspective, and she was promoted to senior manager. Known for her intelligence, beauty, slender figure, and bright smile, Anna attracted many admirers during her time at the Wheatley Hotel in Lenox, Massachusetts. There, she fell in love with Marcus O'Neill, the hotel's head chef, and they got married in 2009, with Anna adopting his last name. After got married with Marcus, Anna's life takes a turn when she meets Brian Walsh. Brian Walsh, born in July 1975 in Boston, Massachusetts, comes from a prominent and wealthy family. In his younger days, he would often borrow money from friends without paying them back. While in college, he would treat friends to meals at expensive restaurants, but would use various tricks to make sure they ended up paying for him. For years, Brian was estranged from his father, Dr. Thomas Walsh, and this distance continued until Thomas passed away in 2018. Their troubled relationship began when Brian deceitfully withdrew nearly $1 million from his father's personal account and vanished with the money. The father did not report his son to the police and even tried to convince him to return the stolen money. When Brian refused, Thomas cut off all communication with him. At the time of this serious theft, Brian's parents had been divorced for a long time, and his father had started a new family. Thomas decided to completely remove his eldest son from his life and his will. However, after Thomas passed away, Brian quickly asserted his claim and filed a lawsuit, alleging that the will was forged by Thomas' widow and younger children to deny him his rightful inheritance. Unfortunately, he could not provide any evidence to support his claims and did not receive any part of the estate. Many people who knew Brian described him as greedy, malicious, and very cruel. He often resorted to violence and struggled to control his emotions. He would get what he wanted using force, and when he was angry, he became a threat to others. Reports indicate that in the late 2000s, Brian received treatment at a psychiatric clinic to manage his anger, during which he was officially diagnosed with sociopathy. In 2014, a unique love story began when Anna met Brian, a hotel guest. At the time, Anna was married to Marcus O'Neill, who also worked at the hotel. Despite Anna's marriage, Brian was immediately attracted to her and began to pursue her with increasing intensity. Used to getting what he wanted and unwilling to accept rejection, he relentlessly sought Anna's attention. He eventually obtained her phone number and home address, where she lived with her husband, creating a troubling situation for all involved. In 2015, the O'Neill family had to involve the police due to Brian's relentless harassment, which occurred around the clock. He repeatedly pursued Anna, calling her at work, texting her personal phone, and insisting that she divorce her husband to be with him. The situation intensified when Brian threatened to harm Anna and her husband if she did not leave with him. The details that followed are unclear, particularly why Anna ultimately changed her mind. However, a year after, she surprisingly divorced her husband. A few months later, Brian became her second husband. The newlyweds moved into a luxurious home in Carlson, Massachusetts, which is about 20 miles southeast of Boston, in a well-off neighborhood. They had 3 sons in quick succession, with the boys being born a couple of years apart. Anna chose not to take maternity leave and successfully balanced her job with being a mother, continuing to advance in her career. She became the regional general manager at Tishman Speyer, a real estate company, where she earned a high salary and became the primary breadwinner for the family. Since her job often required travel to Washington, D.C., she bought another home there in her name, where she stayed during business trips. During these trips, she relied on visiting nannies to help care for her children. What was Brian doing while his wife was busy expanding their family and advancing her career? Brian was unemployed. The $1 million he had once received from his father was running out, and everything his wife earned was carefully registered in her name. Brian was looking for easy ways to make money. Before marrying Anna, he had spent some time in South Korea, where he became friends with a wealthy people whose family owned an impressive art collection. After returning to the United States, Brian kept in touch with this friend, who unexpectedly asked for his help in selling several paintings by the famous artist Andy Warhol. Brian eagerly agreed but chose not only to sell the artworks for a commission, he wanted to profit from the transaction. He had a collection of abstract paintings by a renowned artist, titled Shadow. Brian assessed each painting and gathered the required documentation, including authenticity certificates. He then decided to create copies of both the paintings and the documentation. To do this, he contacted artists who could produce precise replicas of the paintings. Brian convinced the artists that he needed these copies as backups, since each original painting was valued at approximately $250,000. For several years, Brian successfully created and sold fake paintings as if they were originals to collectors from different countries. His scheme came to an end when one of his buyers, an art expert who specializes in Andy Warhol, quickly recognized forgery and took legal action against him. The FBI then launched an investigation, and in April 2021, he pleaded guilty to selling counterfeit art. As part of a deal negotiated by his lawyer, he was placed under house arrest instead of serving time in prison, on the condition that he return the money earned from the sale of the fake paintings to the buyers. Although Brian's movements were heavily restricted, he could leave his house twice a day to drop off and pick up his children from school. He also had 2.5 hours each morning to visit a limited number of approved places nearby, such as stores, pharmacies, and dry cleaners, to buy essential items. On December 31, 2022, the Walsh family was getting ready to celebrate New Year's Eve at home. Only Anna, Brian, and their 3 young sons were present. Because of their age, the boys went to bed early, leaving Anna and Brian at the dinner table. That day, Anna shared her last social media post, where she sent New Year's greetings and mentioned that the past year had been tough, but she and Brian were still together. Anna was supposed to fly to Washington, D.C. for work on January 3rd. However, when she didn't show up for work on January 4th and missed an important deal, her boss, Tishman Speyer, reported her missing to the police. Her phone had also been unreachable for several days. Brian also reported her missing, expressing concern that he had not been able to contact her for several days. According to Brian, he last saw Anna on January 1st. He claimed that she had woken him up early in the morning, saying there were some issues at work and that her boss had asked her to come in earlier than planned. He then believed that his wife had gone to the airport with only a few belongings. However, inconsistencies in the case soon emerged. First, Anna had not purchased, changed, or booked a flight on January 1st, nor had she canceled a flight scheduled for January 3rd. Second, she had not shown up at the airport on either January 1st or January 3rd. Third, how had she left the house? Her personal car was still in the garage, and she had not called a taxi. Brian suggested that she may have hitchhiked, but this theory was not convincing. Brian's statements and behavior raised many questions. His accounts were inconsistent, and he did not seem particularly interested in what was going on. Unable to contact Anna for more than 3 days, he only reported her missing on the 4th day, and only after her workplace called. Brian was considered the prime suspect from the start. However, law enforcement did not have sufficient grounds to arrest him or obtain a search warrant for his family home. They conducted only a cursory search with his permission, but nothing came of it. Brian maintained that he had lived a normal life during those 3 days, visiting shops regularly and doing housework. However, verifying his claims proved difficult. Each time he left the house, he forgot his phone, which he said was often taken away by his older children to play games without permission. On January 5th, police issued a public appeal on television, showing a photo of Anna and asking anyone with information about her whereabouts or fate to contact law enforcement immediately. However, no witnesses came forward. Anna was known to have called her mother and sister one last time on December 31st, making her husband the last person known to have seen her. Surveillance footage from the neighborhood provided no clues. Anna was not captured on any cameras on the morning of January 1st, as if she had never left the house. Her husband, on the other hand, was recorded leaving and returning multiple times, but his destination could not be determined. His claims of a trip to the grocery store were dismissed. His car was not seen in any footage of the route, nor was it spotted in the store. It wasn't until January 8 that Brian was arrested for perjury and taken to the police station for questioning while his home was finally searched. It was discovered that on January 1st, he had visited a hardware store in another area, not on the list of approved places he could visit while under house arrest. There, he spent nearly $500 on a large amount of cleaning supplies, plastic sheeting, duct tape, a mop with a bucket, and utility rags. He paid in cash, perhaps hoping his visit would go unnoticed. The initial search of the family home turned up nothing unusual or suspicious. Everything was in its place, and there were no signs of a struggle or traces of blood. However, when law enforcement descended into the basement, there was no doubt. It was the scene of a gruesome crime. Blood was everywhere, and hidden among the old furniture was a bloody knife and saw wrapped in towels. Brian had previously admitted that on January 3rd, he had visited his mother's house on the other side of town. He claimed that he had violated the terms of his house arrest because his mother needed help with housework due to her poor health. But after the grisly discoveries in the basement, police suspected that along the way, the man may have disposed of evidence or some of his deceased wife's body parts. All the trash cans in the area where he and his wife lived, as well as along the route to his mother's house, were checked. These searches were fruitful, and in one of them, a kitchen axe with traces of dried blood and several bloody towels similar to those found in basement were discovered. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blood on the towels, knives, axes, and saws in the basement was that of the missing Anna, clearing any remaining doubts about her death. The search history on a laptop and a tablet seized from his home shows disturbing intentions. In the weeks leading up to his wife's disappearance, Brian searched the internet for information about the best states for divorce based on property division. He also looked into whether he could claim ownership of a second home in Washington, D.C. that belonged solely to Anna. This raises suspicions about his motives. At around 4 a.m. on January 1st, the first search made on the tablet was, "How long does it take for a body to start decomposing?" This search was followed by nearly 20 additional queries related to body disposal, such as how to clean up blood, how to dismember a body, whether a body could be identified without teeth, how long DNA can last, and if someone could be charged with a crime if the body was never discovered. All of these searches were conducted on the tablet belonging to his young child, who is the offspring of the woman he brutally harmed. By January 3rd, Brian was already looking up how and when someone can inherit property from a missing person. He seemed confident he could avoid punishment and was preparing to claim the inheritance. On January 18th, he was formally charged with his wife's murder, even though her body had not been found. Prosecutors believe that on the night of January 1st, Brian either deliberately or accidentally killed his wife. They suspect he then dismembered her body in their basement and placed the parts in plastic bags, disposing of them in trash bins around the city over the next few days. The area surrounding the Brian residence and within a few kilometers was carefully searched for evidence. Nearby wastelands, forests, and bodies of water were also investigated, but no findings were made. The defendant pleaded not guilty and did not reveal what he did with the body. Furthermore, it was disclosed that Anna had been feeling unhappy recently and had contemplated divorcing her husband. She expressed this concern multiple times during phone calls with her mother and sister. The day before her disappearance, she called her mother, asking her to fly from Serbia for a few days. However, her mother did not take her daughter seriously and decided to postpone the visit. Brian Walsh's trial is currently ongoing, and he is being held at the Norfolk Correctional Facility, waiting for his next court date. Anna's mother has been monitoring the investigation from Serbia, as she has not traveled to the United States. The Serbian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has reached out to the consulate in New York, which is coordinating with the Norfolk District Attorney's Office to ensure that Anna's mother receives timely updates about the investigation in court hearings. The 3 sons of the Walsh family are currently in state custody. Brian's family members do not want to care for them, mainly due to Anna's mother's age and health issues. Additionally, Anna's sister, who lives in Canada, has also refused to take in her nephews. The only person willing to take the boys is Anna's close friend, Pamela Bond, who prefers to care for them herself rather than see them separated and placed in different foster homes. As the investigation progresses and Brian Walsh's trial continues, it highlights the need to be aware of our relationships and the serious harm that can result from betrayal and deceit. While we do not yet know the final outcome for Brian Walsh, including whether he will face punishment or if Anna's body will ever be discovered, we will always remember Anna as a kind and loving person. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kendra Hatcher. Kendra Hatcher was born on February 3, 1980, in Springfield, Sangamon County, Illinois, to Reagan Hatcher and Bonnie Gibson Jameson Cawley. Her parents divorced, and her mother remarried Bruce Jamon. Kendra had 3 sisters, Jamie Kalman, Ashley Lipham, and Melissa Jameson, and 1 brother, Neil Hatcher. She grew up in Pleasant Plains and pursued her studies in dentistry there. Following her divorce in 2010, she relocated to Dallas and started working at Smile Zone Dental Studio. Kendra, who had a strong Christian faith, aimed to use her dental skills to help others. The clinic, for instance, offered free services to disadvantaged children. In her free time, Kendra taught Bible studies and took part in volunteer programs, which involved building churches abroad and offering free dental care to children in Ecuador. Her career quickly took off, and her personal life thrived. On May 24, 2015, Kendra started dating Dr. Ricardo Paniagua. They met through a dating app, and from their first date, they became inseparable. Both shared similar values and interests and wanted the same things in life. Ricardo was completing his dermatology residency at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. Despite having been in a relationship for just a few months, he and his girlfriend were already talking about getting married. Unfortunately, a tragic incident in a parking lot claimed her life, ending all their future plans. Investigators who arrived at the massacre site assessed the crime scene and initially suggested a robbery, as Kendra's purse and some valuables were missing. Beside her body, they discovered bullet fragments and a gun magazine. However, evidence from the shooting shifted the focus away from robbery. Kendra was shot twice. One bullet hit her back and another struck her head. The entry wound was at the top of her head, exciting through the chin, suggesting that Kendra had her hands raised behind her head when she was shot. The murder theory was confirmed after the police obtaining CCTV footage, which helped reconstruct the events. The footage shows a black Jeep Grand Cherokee entering the parking lot at 7:15 p.m. Half an hour later, Kendra arrives home and parks in the same garage. A few minutes later, a man comes up to her, shoots her, and runs to the side, then jumps into the moving black Jeep. The videos were of poor quality and the crime scene couldn't be seen in them. The attackers couldn't be identified, but the vehicle was put on the wanted list. It was decided to release the images of the Jeep and the driver captured by the cameras to the media. The authorities asked the public for help, and that turned out to be effective. A man named Jose Luis Ortiz got in touch with the police. He reported that the car in the images was his, but made it clear that he wasn't involved in the shooting and wasn't drive. The vehicle. When questioned, Jose explained that on the morning of September 2nd, two of his friends, Brenda Delgado and Crystal Cortez, asked him to fix their car and requested to borrow his Jeep until the evening. Jose agreed. He mentioned that later that evening, Brenda called Jose to a restaurant. That same evening, Crystal drove the Jeep come back to Jose's house. Therefore, the man was quite surprised when he saw his Jeep in the news. When Jose saw his Jeep on a TV show, he asked Brenda about it. At first, she said it was a different Jeep on the screen. Then, Brenda mentioned that Crystal had been traveling for work, and she didn't know anything about it. Brenda advised Jose not to tell anyone and just repaint the Jeep. Brenda agreed to pay for the Jeep to be painted. Meanwhile, Jose was waiting for a decision on his U.S. citizenship and wanted to avoid any issues with the police. He understood that Brenda had tricked him, so he went back to the police department to testify. He police monitored all the Jeep's movements that day and identified the two young women whom Jose had mentioned. Brenda Delgado was the first person investigators questioned. She claimed she didn't know Kendra and had never seen her before. When asked about her whereabouts on September 2nd at 7:42 p.m., Brenda provided an alibi, stating that she was at a restaurant with Jose and even presented receipts for the dinner. This raised questions about why someone would keep dinner receipts for so long. Eventually, with detailed investigation, the concealed truth behind the crime was uncovered. The central figure in the investigation was Brenda. She was born into a modest family, Luis and Maria Alato, who immigrated to Dallas from Mexico. Her father worked in a factory. They settled in a low-income neighborhood in southeast Dallas, where Luis found a job in construction, and Maria worked at the U.S. Post Office and cleaned houses. Brenda was their second child and only daughter. She was an excellent student, well-liked by her teachers, and worked part-time at a flower shop and as a waitress. Brenda was very ambitious and dreamed of attending medical school, but unfortunately, her parents couldn't afford the high tuition fees. After graduating from Skyline High School in 2000, she continued to live with her parents while dreaming of a prosperous and beautiful life. To achieve her goals, Brenda worked diligently. She was employed as a dental assistant and also worked at a department in North Park Center. In 2012, Brenda met Ricardo Paniagua and fell in love with him. Their first date, a dream come true for her, was at a Jennifer Lopez concert. In November 2012, just 3 months after meeting, Brenda moved in with Ricardo at his home in Fitzhugh Urban Flats. Ricardo was equally captivated by Brenda and even made an effort to meet her parents. In 2013, she posted on Facebook for his birthday. Brenda later found out she was pregnant, but at Ricardo's urging, she ended the pregnancy, which left her heartbroken. A bit recovered from the decision, Brenda decided to focus on her career and her beloved Ricardo. In the fall of that year, she started attending Sanford. Initially, it appeared that Brenda had moved past the emotional impact of the breakup, but this wasn't true. Her reliance on Ricardo intensified. When Ricardo shared a photo online with his new partner Kendra, who resembled a model, Brenda might feel jealous. Investigators, after gathering details about Brenda and her life, concluded that she had a motive to remove her rival. Ricardo confirmed that Brenda was his ex-girlfriend. They had an on-and-off relationship from 2012 to 2015, the relationship ending a few months before Ricardo met Kendra. Ricardo believed that he and Brenda remained friends and didn't see any issues between Brenda and Kendra. After all, he had dated other women before meeting Kendra, so why would meeting her affect Brenda? Brenda believed she had come up with the perfect plan to win back her ex-boyfriend and eliminate Kendra from his life. She started by offering him support and showed interest in his relationship with Kendra. In reality, she was aware of all their future plans, and Ricardo mistakenly thought her interest was genuine. Unfortunately, men often misunderstand women and sometimes trust them blindly. Brenda had been plotting her own plan for months. She had opened Ricardo's mail and knew all his plans with Kendra, even when and where they had booked tickets. All of this was infuriating to Brenda. She wanted to get rid of Kendra Hatcher, sincerely believing that she had taken Kendra's place. Brenda transferred Ricardo's account to her phone to monitor him closely. Following Ricardo and Kendra became her main focus in life. She became obsessed with stalking them, eventually quitting her job to dedicate all her time to this pursuit. Over time, Brenda developed a sinister plan to kill Kendra, whom she despised. To carry out this plan, Brenda approached several acquaintances, offering them money to harm Kendra. A mutual acquaintance introduced her to Crystal Cortez, a 21-year-old single mother facing severe financial difficulties. For just $500, Crystal agreed to help her. Following Brenda's instructions, Crystal contacted Christopher Love, who agreed to carry out the crime. Crystal gave Christopher $500 from Brenda along with 2 types of illegal substances. Kendra was being followed by 2 women who wanted to learn her habits and daily schedule to choose the best time and place for their crime. On September 2, 2015, they used Jose's car. Crystal and Christopher waited for Kendra in the parking lot. They didn't follow her home from work because they were worried about getting stuck in traffic. That evening, they successfully carried out their plan. A few days after the crime, Crystal and Christopher were arrested. The suspects denied their guilt and being at the crime scene. However, things changed when Christopher was found with the gun that killed Kendra in the side compartment of the car. Crystal, on the other hand, was nervous and constantly confused in her testimony, giving different testimony about why the SUV appeared in various parts of the city. In the initial questioning, Crystal confessed to being the driver in the parking lot. However, she insisted that she was forced there by an armed carjacker who had entered her SUV and made her drive. Trying to appear innocent, she falsely stated that her son was with her in the car. This claim was later disproved as security cameras did not show any child present. During the interrogation, as more evidence emerged, Crystal altered her testimony and sought to negotiate with the investigators. She agreed to testify against Brenda in exchange for a reduced sentence. Crystal informed the police that Brenda wanted Kendra dead and that the crime was Brenda's idea. Crystal stated that within 2 weeks of meeting Brenda, they started planning the crime. The CE found out that Brenda wasn't just sad because her relationship with Ricardo had ended, she was obsessed and desperate to win him back. She pretended to be happy about being his loyal friend, but her life started falling apart. She began to resent Kendra, believing she had taken her place. According to Crystal, it was at this moment that Brenda decided she wanted to get rid of Kendra Hatcher. That's when a plan to commit the perfect crime hatched in Brenda Delgado's mind. During her testimony, Crystal explained how Brenda came up with the perfect crime and enlisted her help. Together, Brenda and Crystal started planning to kill Kendra. They met several times and came up with various plans. The initial idea was to inject Kendra with illegal drugs or sedatives and then dispose of her. Brenda knew she needed a trustworthy accomplice to avoid suspicion, so she began the search. They drove through the rundown neighborhoods and asked several people for assistance. This is how they met Christ. Ofer. He agreed to help and played a significant role in planning the details of the crime. The three of them decided together that the quickest way to kill her was to shoot her. During their collaboration, Crystal disclosed that September 2nd was intentionally selected. Brenda was aware that Kendra and Ricardo were planning a trip to Mexico, so they decided to eliminate her before the vacation. Brenda told Crystal she wanted the crime to appear as a failed robbery. Next, the criminals then selected the location for the murder. For days, they meticulously followed Kendra's movements, recording her every minute to ensure nothing altered for the chosen day. After her work hours, they tracked her path home and planned how to subtly access the apartment complex's secure parking garage. On September 1, 2015, they conducted a final check. On the morning of the crime, Brenda and Crystal picked up the Jeep from Jose and then picked up Christopher. Brenda was dropped off at the library in Carlson to create an alibi, while Crystal and Christopher headed to Kendra's apartment complex. They waited across the street for about 30 minutes before driving to Kendra's workplace. After failing to follow her due to traffic, they went back to the house to wait. When Kendra arrived home, Christopher, wearing gloves, got out of the car, approached her with a gun, and shot her as she exited her vehicle. Crystal mentioned that she didn't witness the shooting but heard it. After that, she drove Christopher home, picked up her son from his grandmother, and later met Brenda at Jose's house to give him the Jeep. As a result, Brenda's dream was fulfilled. She was free from her despised rival and only needed to wait for a message from her beloved Ricardo. Brenda felt delighted that she had executed the perfect crime. Crystal's honest confession and testimony against Brenda clearly proved Brenda's guilt, leading to a swift issuance of an arrest warrant. However, when police went to arrest her, Brenda was not at home. As a dual citizen, she escaped to Mexico. Following her escape, her role in arranging a contract killing was revealed, and she was added to the wanted list. On April 6, 2016, the FBI added Brenda to their list of most wanted fugitives, offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to her capture. She was the only woman on the list at that time and the 9th woman ever to be included. Just 2 days later, Mexican authorities arrested her in Torreon, Coahuila. She was extradited to the United States on October 6, under the condition that she would not face the death penalty. Once in the U.S., she was charged with capital murder in Texas, and her trial began in 2017. During the court hearing, the families of Kendra and Ricardo openly shared their feelings. Witnesses verified Brenda's harmful obsession with her ex-lover and her intentions. In court, Brenda's cousin Moses Martinez discussed his sister's depression following her breakup with Ricardo. He also disclosed that Brenda had offered him money to attack Kendra with a baseball bat, a proposal he declined. At the trial, Jennifer Escobar, Brenda's friend, testified that Brenda was obsessed with Ricardo. She recounted that Brenda would read all his emails and track his movements through his phone. Jennifer informed the jury that Brenda had a copy of his house key and access to his bank accounts. She also revealed that Brenda asked for her help to get rid of the hated Kendra, suggesting methods like injecting something lethal or using a bat to put her in a coma. Brenda offered Jennifer $2,000, a car, and illegal drugs in exchange for her help. Jennifer talked about this offer with her parents and decided to refuse it. It's odd that, when presented with the suggestion to harm or kill someone, but no one reported this threat to the police. Brenda's obsession was highlighted through evidence presented by several associates in court. It was found that Brenda had a motive to want Kendra dead, seeing her as a barrier to reuniting with Ricardo. Evidence revealed that Brenda's obsession grew significantly in the months before Kendra's death. During the hearing, an ATM withdrawal receipt for $500 was presented, which Brenda gave to Crystal as payment for her involvement. Christopher received a cash payment of $600. Cell phone records showed that Brenda, Crystal, and Christopher were together before the crime. Moreover, there were over 99 calls recorded between Brenda and Crystal from August 22 to September 4, demonstrating their constant communication to plan the murder of Kendra. The defendant's attorney attempted to place most of the blame on the actual perpetrators, but this strategy was unsuccessful. The defense claimed that Brenda was not present at the crime scene, offering an alibi and receipts showing she was at a restaurant when the crime occurred. Although Brenda did not plead guilty, the jury disagreed with her defense. Brenda was found guilty of murdering Kendra, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole after just 30 minutes of deliberation. Christopher, who directly committed the murder, admitted his guilt and was sentenced to death. Crystal cooperated with the investigation and pleaded guilty, which resulted in her receiving a 35-year prison sentence with the possibility of parole. Kendra Hatcher's family expressed satisfaction with the court's decision and quietly left the courtroom after the verdict. On the other hand, the Delgado family never believed Brenda could be involved, as they knew her as a loving daughter and a woman with solid family values and Christian principles. In conclusion, the tragic case of Kendra Hatcher underscores the devastating consequences of unchecked jealousy and obsession. Brenda Delgado's relentless pursuit to reclaim her past love led to a senseless crime that ended a life full of promise. The investigation revealed the intricate and disturbing lengths to which Brenda went to orchestrate Kendra's murder, revealing a dark side that was hidden beneath a facade of normalcy. The verdict delivered justice for Kendra and her family, but it also serves as a stark reminder of the profound impact that personal vendettas can have when they spiral out of control. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Gabby Dulan. Gabby Dulan was born on December 26, 2007, in Scottsville, Kentucky, a small town with a population of just over 4,000. In Scottsville, most people know each other or know someone in every family. Like many small towns, here there are very few types of entertainment. Locals primarily focused on school sports, especially football. The local school had good fields for football, baseball, and tennis, where they frequently held games and competitions. Participating in these activities has become a tradition for locals, especially when their children participate. Gabby's family was typical. Her parents had 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter. The oldest son was a member of the school football team, while Gabby participated in cheerleading. In November 2015, when Gabby was 7 years old, their town was preparing for the biggest football game of the year. Their school team was about to compete against a team from another county, and everyone was excited for this contest. Although Gabby's older brother played on the team, but she liked playing with other children more than playing games. Gabby's parents originally intended to leave her at home with their youngest son, cared for by a relative. However, Gabby convinced them to let her join them. On the evening of November 14th, they went to the school field for a game. In addition to local people, many people from a neighboring county came to support their team. Once they arrived at the stadium, Gabby saw her friends and asked her mom if she could play with them. Her mom agreed but reminded her to stay on school grounds and stick with the other kids. After that, her mom went to the bleachers, while she ran off to meet her friends. Gabby ran back and forth to her mom a few times. After that, she ran away to play again. At one point, she visited her dad, who was in the announcement room, and asked him for some money to buy snacks at the concession stand, then she running off again. Minutes later, Gabby's friends approached her mom in the bleachers, looking worried. Her mom noticed Gabby was not with them and asked what was wrong. The girls explained they had decided to play hide and seek, and Gabby was to find them. They had hidden in the restroom, but time passed, and Gabby never found them. Thinking they had won, the girls left their hiding spot to find Gabby, but she was nowhere to be seen. They called her name and checked all the places they had been playing earlier, but Gabby had seemingly disappeared. They then remembered that Gabby might have gone to the bleachers to find her mom, so they rushed there. Gabby's mother panicked when she discovered her daughter was missing and quickly informed her husband. He hurried off to search the area around the stadium. Meanwhile, the mother headed to the concession stand, where Gabby had wanted to buy snacks, to continue her search. While searching, the parents Gabby's encountered friends and shared the news about their daughter's disappearance. Concerned, their friends joined in a search for Gabby. They thoroughly searched the area around the stadium but found no trace of Gabby. Returning to the stadium, the parents Gabby's made an announcement over the loudspeakers in hopes that she would hear it, but there was still no sign of her. As the game paused and spectators returned to their seats, they continued to ask people if they had seen Gabby, and some offered to help search as well. They went out again to search the area around the stadium and asked the staff to turn on flashlights around the baseball field, which led to a small forest. They walked through the forest but still couldn't find Gabby. By this time, about 20 minutes had passed since she disappeared, and the parents decided to call the police. Officers quickly arrived at the scene, listened to the accounts from the parents and Gabby's friends, and they began their search. The local police department had little experience with serious cases like this, as child disappearances were rare in their small town. The officers immediately considered the worst-case scenario, that Gabby may have been abducted or harmed. The officers encountered a pressing issue: the suspected kidnapper was likely at the stadium, where a game was about to conclude. Realizing they had limited time before fans started leaving, which may include suspects, they decided to stop the game and lock down the stadium, keeping everyone inside. Police kept watch at all exits to stop anyone from fleeing. They decided not to inform people about the situation, to avoid causing panic, so as not to hinder their search. If people became aware that a kidnapper of a 7-year-old girl might be nearby, it could lead to chaos. Meanwhile, state police arrived at the school and began searching the surrounding area. They moved toward the baseball field and entered the woods. Deeper into the trees, they discovered a small creek where they found the body of a girl, later identified as Gabby. They called for an ambulance to transport her body to the medical examiner. A preliminary examination indicated asphyxiation, due to visible marks on her neck. Furthermore, part of Gabby's clothes were also missing, making the police suspect that she had been sexually assaulted. Gabby's mother saw an ambulance near the woods and immediately thought that her daughter had been found in need of medical attention. She rushed to the scene, but was stopped by the police, who didn't want her to witness the disturbing scene they were dealing with. The police investigation had quickly turned into a murder case, so they decided to relocate everyone from the stadium to the school gym. The investigators suspected that the killer might be among the group, and they needed to identify the perpetrator as soon as possible. The investigators then informed Gabby's parents about the likely circumstances of her death. They inquired if the parents had any suspicions about the person responsible for this heinous act. Specifically, they inquired if anyone had made threats against the family or if the parents had noticed anything unusual. However, Gabby's parents stated they had no idea who could be behind this act. Then, detectives interviewing Gabby's friends to see if they had noticed anything unusual that evening. They asked if anyone had been following or watching them, but the girls didn't remember anything suspicious. Detectives also brought Gabby's friends to the gym and asked them to carefully observe the people present, hoping to trigger their memory. Unfortunately, this effort did not yield any significant leads. The lead detective persisted in his belief that Gabby's friends may have unknowingly seen the kidnapper. He suspected that they might have been hesitant to point him out due to fear. To aid their recall, he encouraged them to remember every detail from that evening. Eventually, one of Gabby's friends mentioned that when she hid from Gabby in the restroom, she saw a man near the door. Although the girl's memory of the man's appearance was limited, she recalled that he was wearing a denim jacket. The police spoke to the ticket vendor, who confirmed seeing a man with a denim jacket draped. The vendor found this person's behavior unusual and suspected he was intoxicated. Although this new information helped, the police still couldn't identify the man. The police started questioning the people who had been at the game. As they did, it became clear why they were all being held there. They grew concerned, particularly for the safety of their children. Despite their fear, they cooperated with the police and answered their questions. To further investigate, the police cross-referenced the names of men present in the gym against a sex offenders registry, but found no matches. They also checked on sex offenders who had lived near the school, verifying their whereabouts at the time of the incident, but all of them had alibis. None of them had been near the school at the time of the incident. Several witnesses reported that they saw a man named Timothy Madden, he acting strangely near the women's restroom during the game. As a local resident, many people were familiar with him, but they stated that his behavior that evening seemed suspicious. According to these witnesses, Madden was wearing a denim jacket, which matches the description provided by one of Gabby's friends who also saw a man near the restroom. A witness who was a distant relative of Timothy reported that during the game, Timothy seemed distracted. Despite his younger son playing on the field, Timothy, who normally showed great interest in his son's sports activities, wasn't paying attention. Several other witnesses also expressed concerns about Timothy's unusual behavior, leading investigators to interrogate him. As night fell, many people had been released from the school. Before speaking with Timothy, investigators sought the local sheriff's opinion. The sheriff, who had known Timothy, doubted he was capable of committing such a crime. Timothy lived with his wife and 5 children. When police went to speak with him, they knocked on his door, and he answered. The officers asked if he knew the reason for their visit, and Timothy stated he was aware of Gabby's murder, but had no involvement in it. The detectives then used a tactic to gather more information. They asked Timothy if he could explain why several eyewitnesses claimed to have recorded him talking to Gabby shortly before her murder, through videos they supposedly provided. However, the detectives had fabricated this information. Their intention was to provoke Timothy into revealing his guilt or new information if he was involved in the crime. Timothy initially claimed he had no knowledge of the events, but he quickly changed his story. He admitted to speaking to Gabby near the stadium that evening. According to Timothy, he had stepped outside to smoke when several girls ran by him. Shortly after, Gabby approached and asked if he had seen her friends, explaining they were playing hide-and-seek and she couldn't find them. Timothy directed her towards their location, and she ran off. The detectives found Timothy's rapid change in story suspicious. Furthermore, his account indicated that he had spoken to Gabby just minutes before her disappearance. Notably, at the time when they met near the stadium, there were no witnesses present, which could have provided Timothy with an opportunity to commit the crime. The detectives then inquired if Timothy could provide a reasonable explanation if his DNA was found on Gabby's body. He replied calmly that he had none. They also requested a DNA sample from Timothy and the clothing he wore at the stadium. Timothy agreed to both requests. However, when handing over his clothing to the police, they discovered suspicious stains on the pants, denim jacket, and underwear that resembled blood. When questioned about the stains, Timothy insisted they were just dirt and denied any wrongdoing. However, the police were skeptical and decided to wait for the DNA analysis results to proceed with an arrest. After several days, the forensic pathologist completed the examination of the victim's body, confirming that Gabby's cause of death was manual strangulation. The pathologist also determined that she had been brutally assaulted. A biological sample of the perpetrator was extracted and sent to the laboratory for further analysis. The day after the murder, something unexpected happened. An anonymous letter arrived at the police station, claiming a suspicious person had been seen at the game. The letter provided a detailed description of the person's car, including the make and license plate number. This allowed investigators to quickly track down the vehicle's owner, who was a student living about 30 minutes from Scottsville. When questioned by the police, the student denied attending the game and knowing about the murder. He claimed to have been at work that evening, and the police were able to verify his alibi. As a result, he was removed from the list of suspects. Despite this, the person who wrote the anonymous letter was never identified. It is unclear whether the letter was intended as a trap or a cruel joke, but it is clear that the student was innocent. Police quickly received additional clues. Several people reported suspicious behavior by a 16-year-old local boy. He had given conflicting accounts of his whereabouts on the day of the game, claiming both to have been there and not to have attended. He also mentioned seeing girls playing hide and seek. The detectives discovered that the boy was Timothy Madden's son. However, what they found even more alarming was that the boy had threatened his father with a knife just 2 weeks before the murder. The police wanted to question the boy further but needed his parents to be present. However, his mother refused to cooperate and wouldn't provide a DNA sample, leaving the police without any concrete evidence. As news of the police investigation into the Timothy family spread, rumors began circulating in the small town of Scottsville. Some speculated that one of Timothy's older sons could be a suspect, while others suspected Timothy himself. Gabby's parents were shocked to hear these rumors, especially since they had known Timothy Madden since childhood and were close to his family. Their children played on the same sports teams, and they would often sit together at games. Given their long-standing friendship, Gabby's parents found it difficult to imagine that anyone from their social circle could be connected to the murder. Following the spread of rumors in town, another incident occurred. The 20-year-old eldest son of the Timothy family began sending text messages to the police. He using profanity and issuing threats, insisting police stop bothering his family. He then was promptly arrested for making these threats. Further investigation revealed that there was an outstanding arrest warrant for him in another town, related to allegations of assaulting a minor. During questioning, the young man attributed his behavior to frustration over the accusations against his family. He denied any involvement in the murder, claiming he was at his cousin's house in a neighboring town on the evening in question. He consented to providing a DNA sample, which was then sent to the lab for analysis. On November 20th, 6 days after Gabby's murder, her funeral was held, drawing hundreds of mourners from Scottsville and surrounding towns. Everyone came together to support Gabby's parents, donating to help cover the funeral expenses. Meanwhile, the lab finished analyzing the DNA evidence, comparing it to samples from Timothy and his son. The results were conclusive. The semen on Gabby's body matched Timothy Madden's DNA, and the blood on his clothes matched Gabby's DNA. Detectives attended the funeral and discreetly informed Gabby's parents about things this. At the same time, police officers arrived at Timothy's house and took him into custody. However, Timothy still maintains that he is innocent. He said the blood on his clothes was his own, the result of a scratch from a fence. This contradicted his initial testimony to police, in which he had claimed the stain was mud. With the DNA evidence in hand, the prosecution took the case to court, seeking the death penalty. During trial preparation, Timothy's lawyer maintained his client's innocence. He raised concerns about the reliability of the evidence, citing inconsistencies in the timeline. Specifically, the lawyer argued that Timothy was at the stadium filming a game at the time of the murder. However, Timothy himself had previously told police that he saw Gabby around the same time. The lawyer highlighted that Gabby's body was discovered in a creek, yet when Timothy returned to the stadium, his clothes were dry. Additionally, Timothy's mother, who resided with him, reported that when Timothy came home, he was wearing clean clothes, didn't look troubled, and behaved as usual. However, the prosecution argued that the discovery of Timothy's semen on Gabby's body made all of the defense's arguments meaningless. This evidence firmly established that Timothy was involved in the case. According to police, his account of that evening contained some truth. It is possible that Timothy did leave the stadium during the game and encountered Gabby, who was searching for her friends. Given that Timothy was the father of one of Gabby's friends, she would have been familiar with him. Gabby may have approached Timothy to ask about the whereabouts of the other girls. At this point, Timothy might have concocted a plan, telling Gabby that the girls had gone into the woods behind the baseball field and offered to take her there. Once they were far enough from the school, he could have assaulted and killed her, then go back to the match. The wait for Timothy's trial had been ongoing for 4 years, causing distress for Gabby's family. They were anxious for justice to be served and for the person responsible for the murder to be held accountable. However, the case was slowed down due to many administrative procedures, leaving the family frustrated and having to wait for many years. In 2019, the prosecution and defense started negotiating a plea deal. The prosecution proposed waiving the death penalty if Timothy pleaded guilty and accepted a life sentence. Gabby's parents supported this proposal, as the prolonged wait for the trial was taking a toll on them. They also wanted to avoid the emotional pain of attending multiple hearings. Although Timothy had consistently maintained his innocence, he eventually agreed to the plea deal and confessed. However, the terms of the agreement did not require him to disclose the details of his actions. He only had to admit his guilt. This was unsatisfactory for Gabby's family, as they wanted the perpetrator to take full responsibility for his crimes and provide a complete account of what happened to their daughter. The court hearing became heated, Gabby's father yelling at Timothy and Timothy's relatives shouting at Gabby's family. The judge was forced to intervene, calling a break and separating the parties. Ultimately, Timothy was sentenced to life in a maximum security prison. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of April Jones. April Jones was born on April 4, 2007. April is a cheerful child, but she also has her own problems. Born 7 weeks early, she had some early health issues, but with medical support, she grew into a typical young girl. However, April was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, a condition caused by a brain injury, often due to a lack of oxygen at or shortly after birth. Cerebral palsy affected her lower body. Although her condition was not very severe, it caused her pain and made basic muscle movements difficult. Despite having a mild condition, she required special care. On October 1, 2012, at around 7 o'clock in the evening, 5 years old, April was playing outside with her friend at the Bryn Aeg housing estate in West Wales. Usually, April's parents don't let her go out to play when it's dark like that, but because she had received an excellent report card the day before, they allowed her extra playtime. April was supposed to return home after playing outside with her friend for about 20 minutes, but after that she did not return home. Her parents had last seen her on a bike, so they went out to look for her. They found April's 7-year-old friend nearby, but April wasn't with her. The friend explained that April had gotten into a car. Fortunately, she could describe the man who took April. He was wearing a green jacket, had blue or green eyes, brown hair, and a beard. Despite being young, the friend provided a crucial detail: she saw April get into the car on the driver's side. In the UK, the steering wheel is on the right side, which suggests the man was driving a left-hand drive car. Despite it being nighttime, but the police responded swiftly. The first officers reached the scene, the 999 call. While search teams were being assembled, authorities interviewed people who knew April to determine if anything unusual had occurred that day or in the days before her disappearance. April's family couldn't think of anything that could help the police. April had gone to her swimming class earlier that day, and after returning home, she was allowed to play outside with her friends. It had only been a short while since April went out, but it was getting late in the autumn, so it would get dark soon, making it very difficult to find her. News of April's disappearance spread quickly throughout the neighborhood, through word of mouth and social networks. Within hours, locals left their homes to help search her. Although their intentions were good, this outpouring of support hindered the police investigation. The police were grateful for everyone's enthusiasm, but they still needed to conduct door-to-door inquiries to see if anyone had seen April or seen the person who might have taken her. The problem was that very few people were at home because most had gone out to assist with the search. The story of April's disappearance quickly drew national attention. Television crews and reporters from all over the country flocked to the small town to cover the incident. At 10:30, the police provided a status update to the public and media, voicing concern as they still hadn't found any leads related to April. They appealed to anyone with information to come forward right away. On the evening of October 1st, authorities released more details about April's disappearance. At the time she went missing, April was wearing her school polo shirt and a purple coat. Over 100 people had joined the search to support the police. The local community played a crucial role in the search, as their knowledge of the area invaluable. In addition to locals, a large number of volunteers from England traveled to Wales to assist, and several people from South Wales also joined the search. The search was difficult due to the town's surroundings, which included mountains, waterfalls, gorges, dense forests, and uneven terrain, all of which were exacerbated by the cold, rainy, and overcast autumn evening. The police divided the volunteers into multiple search teams, which then combed through a vast area of about 60 square kilometers. After 8 hours of searching the difficult Welsh terrain, by 3:30 a.m., the volunteers had thoroughly covered the area. Although the situation was desperate, there was a poignant beauty in the fact that many people were willing to give their time to help find little April. This outpouring of support must have brought some comfort to her family, who waited anxiously by the phone for news. However, the police had prohibited the family from joining the search, fear that they might encounter terrible things about their daughter. On October 2, 2012, April was still missing despite extensive nighttime searches. In response, the police in Wales issued a child rescue notice, a nationwide alert that disseminated April's description and that of her abductor to all UK police agencies. This was the first time the child rescue alarm had been sounded nationwide. 14 hours after April's disappearance, the media began pressuring the police to release every detail of their investigation. The police faced criticism for their handling of the case. But it can be argued that this was unfair. They had responded swiftly, organizing search parties and searching for April throughout the night, doing everything possible given the challenging weather. Detective Superintendent Andy John led the investigation, keeping the public and media informed with regular updates. To aid the search, he established roadblocks where officers stopped and inspected every vehicle. Posters with April's photo were also distributed, aiming to spark anyone's memory that might help locate her. People living nearby and those from farther away had been sending reports to the police. Many of these reports mentioned the same name, Mark Bridger. Several locals identified Mark as matching describe April's kidnapper. He was known as a Land Rover driver with blue eyes and short facial hair, and notably, his car had a left-hand drive. Witnesses reported seeing Mark or his car near where April went missing. They found the last known address of Mark and multiple attempts to contact him. However, both Mark and April were not present at the address. Mark has never encountered any legal problems before. However, some local residents reported that he had participated in the initial nighttime search for April. Due to the large number of volunteers, it was not possible to verify this information. The authorities shifted their focus to locating Mark. They deployed helicopters to scour the area from above while officers searched all locations on the ground. They discovered that Mark had recently moved into a cottage called Mount Pleasant. When police arrived, they found no one living there and there were no cars there. They entered the cottage and called out April's name, but there was no response. It was initially unclear whether Mark had been evading authorities. At 4:30, police announced that Mark had been captured. Before, a police aircraft spotted him walking his dog on a country road near April's family home. He appeared to have altered his appearance by shaving his head and beard. Police helicopters led patrol cars to Mark's location. When stopped by officers, he provided his name without attempting to hide his identity. The officer then inquired about April's whereabouts, to which he responded that it was an accident, claiming he had unintentionally crushed her with his car and was now unaware of her location. During the arrest, Mark became visibly emotional. The arresting officers informed him of his rights, stating, "You do not have to say anything, but anything you say may be used as evidence." Strangely enough, Mark was eager to talk, even though he didn't have to. The officers reminded him that he was free to speak or not. Mark told them he had been searching for April on foot day and night. His car, a left-hand drive Land Rover Discovery, was in the garage. He denied abducting her and said he tried to revive her but panicked. He only learned her name that morning from the news. He wished he could remember where he left her, saying she was lifeless on the seat. He apologized to April's family. Meanwhile, in April's hometown, a large-scale search operation was underway. Police, canine teams, volunteers, and mountain rescuers scoured the Welsh countryside, but couldn't find her. Volunteers numbering in the hundreds from all over the country worked relentlessly, usually only sleep for a few hours, then continue searching. The police received over 600 offers of help, with many suggesting areas to search. Thanks to local expertise, over 20 areas were thoroughly checked. At this stage, detectives had Mark Bridger in custody and were interrogating him. Mark immediately began discussing the incidents of that day. He stated that he had no knowledge of April's whereabouts and described his activities, which included attending a parent-teacher conference at his daughter's school and then parking near his girlfriend's house, also which is close to April's parents' house. Mark admitted to consuming a few drinks and seeing two girls riding their bicycles. He remembered the dark-haired girl riding behind his car, and claimed that when he looked for the other girl, she was nowhere to be seen, but then suddenly her bike appeared. Mark admitted that he had been nearby at the time of the incident and April was hit by his car while she was riding her bike. He claimed he was drunk at the time. He stated that he didn't intend to harm April, but knew he had made a mistake. He said he took her into his car to rush her to the hospital. Mark described April's condition, said her face had turned pale, and her lips were purple. He acknowledged that his actions led to her death and mentioned that he knew her parents. However, after this admission, Mark's memory became unclear. Despite initially being open about his involvement, but he couldn't recall what he did with April's body after she died. even though the police tried to interrogate Marks many times, but they were hindered when he suddenly claimed to have amnesia. He repeatedly stated that he was in his house, couldn't find April, and wouldn't have abandoned her. Initially, Mark was cooperative and honest with the police, but they began to doubt his sincerity when he claimed memory loss at the exact moment April went missing and suspected that he might be withholding information. The police decided to tread carefully, they aware that using an aggressive tone during questioning might lead Mark to refuse further cooperation. The police obtained a statement from April's 7-year-old friend, claiming that April voluntarily got into Mark's car, appeared happy, and was smiling. It is unlikely that someone would deceive a child in this way without reason or motive. However, the police also had a witness who contradicted this account. The witness reported that April entered the Land Rover through the driver's door, which is actually the left-hand side door in the UK. This contradicts Mark's story, suggesting that his testimony may be fabricated. When confronted with this new information, Mark became uncomfortable. Despite this, he maintained his original story and showed no signs of wavering under various lines of questioning. Detectives employed a novel approach by consulting Dr. Joe Sullivan, a renowned expert in criminal body language and behavior. Dr. Sullivan's involvement went beyond analyzing Mark's interviews. He also visited his home to gather information for a psychological profile. What he found was astounding. Mark's home contained an assortment of disturbing items, including knives, handcuffs, and a shotgun, some of which were concealed, while others were openly displayed. Furthermore, he worked at a slaughterhouse. According to Dr. Sullivan's assessment, Mark was a fantasist who identified himself with fictional characters like Rambo, indicating a disconnection from reality. Despite Dr. Sullivan's advice, the police took a paternalistic approach with Mark. However, he stuck to his story. The police then relied on forensic specialists to thoroughly search his house for evidence. The search team found small specks of blood in the restroom, but at that point, it was unclear whose blood it was. It was possible that the blood came from he cutting himself while shaving. The police sent the samples to the laboratory, but it would take up to 24 hours to get the results. Dr. Sullivan warned the police that Mark was unlikely to feel empathy or guilt about his actions. Although he might try to pretend otherwise, but Dr. Sullivan believed that he lacked these emotions. As a result, Dr. Sullivan advised the police that appealing to his better nature would be pointless, as he didn't have one. The police cannot expect Mark to be remorseful, sympathetic, or confess his guilt. The police took Dr. Sullivan's advice seriously and redetained Mark on suspicion of murder. This sudden turn caught Bridger off guard, and him pale. Furthermore, explicit child photos were discovered on his laptop, leading to his second arrest for possessing offensive images of children. As the investigation intensified, Mark suspected the police had more information than they were letting on. Meanwhile, April's parents were informed on Thursday, 3 days after her disappearance, that the police had shifted their focus from finding her alive to investigating a murder case. They had to break the devastating news to their children that they had lost a sister. Receiving news that their daughter was presumed dead, but her body hasn't been found yet, was a difficult pill to swallow. The police kept this information from Mark, but they also advised the volunteers who had been tirelessly searching for April to stand down and let the experts handle the situation. However, this suggestion was met with resistance from the hundreds of volunteers, many of whom were in tears as they left the site. On Friday, for days after April vanished, police search teams continued their search for clues. There was no evidence that Mark killed April, according to forensic experts. A thorough examination of his Land Rover revealed no marks, no blood, no hair, and no skin. This was despite Mark's claim that there should have been signs of April's injuries, such as scratches on the bumper or blood or hair inside the car. He tried to explain by saying he didn't see any blood on April after his car hit her. Although April was run over, she didn't appear to have any open wounds. However, Mark's story was about to be exposed as a fabrication. On Friday night at 6:15 p.m., the lab contacted the detectives. The results of the DNA comparison between April's toothbrush and the blood spatters found in Mark's restroom. They matched. Additionally, DNA evidence was found on his fleece collar and jogging bottoms. After gathering enough evidence, the police charged April. They found photos on his laptop, which they showed him during questioning. The photos depicted minors being sexualized, exploited, and manipulated. However, Mark denied any wrongdoing, claiming he didn't enjoy things, despite being shown the images and asked to describe them. The photos were disturbing and something no reasonable person would have. Mark also denied searching for explicit websites for personal gratification, even when confronted with his internet search history. After 3.5 days in custody, the police's 96-hour questioning period was almost over. They made one last attempt to get Mark to tell the truth. The decision to press charges now rested with the Crown Prosecution Service. The police questioned Mark about April's whereabouts and whether he intended to murder her. They pointed out that no blood was found on the bathroom walls at his house, yet a full DNA profile of April was discovered. Mark claimed that if he had blood on his hands and didn't dry them, he might have accidentally flicked blood onto the walls. However, this contradicted his previous statement that he hadn't experienced any issues with blood for a week prior. Despite the inconsistencies, Mark stuck to his story, stating that some blood must have been present, even though he had previously claimed there was no blood on him or April, or in the car. Mark was subjected to intense police questioning regarding the images found on his laptop. The police were struggling to find ways to get him to reveal the truth. When asked if he was using the photographs for self-gratification, he denied it. However, he did suggest that a buildup of sexual frustration might have contributed to his actions on the morning in question. Mark's composure eventually began to crack under the pressure of questioning. He became agitated, raised his voice, and started using profanity. It was clear that he took issue with being labeled a pedophile. After a lengthy and challenging process, the police were finally able to uncover Mark's true nature. They were convinced they had the right person and had already submitted the case to the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS. The CPS subsequently authorized the police to charge Mark with the abduction and murder of April Jones. When informed of the charges, Mark showed no emotion or remorse. As he arrived at court in a prison van, everyone threw objects and shouted obscenities at him. Over the next 2 weeks, forensic investigators found more and more blood traces from April at Mark's house. The fireplace also contained several broken bones, but they were so badly decomposed that it was impossible to confirm if they belonged to April. On May 30, 2013, a jury convicted 47-year-old Mark Bridger of kidnapping and murdering April Jones. Judge Mr. Justice Griffith Williams described Mark as a chronic liar and a pedophile who had long harbored fantasies about young girls. However, the judge believed that he was not specifically targeting April, but rather was pursuing a young girl in general. Unfortunately, April became the poor victim of Mark's actions. Mr. Justice Griffith Williams immediately sentenced Mark Bridger to life in prison, with the details of his sentence to remain undisclosed to the public. Mark claimed that April's death was a tragic accident, resulting from his car hitting her. However, his credibility had been lost long before his trial, in the eyes of both law enforcement and the judicial system. Given the overwhelming evidence against him, Mark was unable to escape justice. April was a young girl who was playing outside with her friend, then she was targeted by an individual with a twisted mind. April's family was relieved that Mark would spend the rest of his life in prison, unable to harm any more children, despite their overwhelming grief. However, April's remains were never found after the trial. While 17 bone fragments were discovered in Mark's house, but it was impossible to point out that they belonged to April. April's passing has left an unfillable void in the hearts of her loved ones. It is hoped that her family and friends can find some way to rebuild their lives. A funeral service for April was held in her hometown on April 26, 2013. May April Jones rest in peace. Hey detectives. Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Michael Haight. Michael Haight was born on January 7, 1980, in Seattle, Washington. As a child, his family moved to Cedar City, Utah. As a child, Michael enjoyed regular kid activities like baseball, basketball, and soccer. He was also an Eagle Scout and did well in school. After graduating from high school in 1998, Michael spent a summer working at a fish plant in Alaska. He quickly rose to the position of line manager, supervising over a dozen people. His work ethic and dedication were recognized, leading to his promotion. A hard-working member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Michael went on a mission trip to southern Brazil. This experience strengthened his faith and commitment to his community. After returning to the United States, Michael attended Southern Utah University, graduating with a business degree in 2004. While at the university, Michael met his future wife, Tasha Earle. They fell in love and were married at St. George's Temple on May 10, 2003. Michael seemed to be the epitome of a hardworking husband and father. He coached his children's sports teams, attended school concerts, and spent time with them skiing and doing projects in the garage. However, on January 4, 2023, a shocking discovery exposed the dark reality of Michael's family life. That day, police found 8 bodies in Michael's home, leaving police and neighbors stunned and baffled. The alarm was raised when Tasha Haight missed an online appointment and her husband Michael did not show up for work, prompting worried coworkers to call the police and request a welfare check at the family's home. Officers went to Michael's Enoch home, but no one answered when they knocked. Upon further inspection, the home appeared to be empty. Since Michael's family had 5 children, officers contacted the Iron County School District to check if any children were at school. They discovered that no children were there. When officers arrived at Michael's home, the Michaels lived in a 1-story home with a basement. Detectives arrived shortly after the home was designated a crime scene. Upon entering the master bedroom, they found 4-year-old Gavin lying face down, his head turned to the left. One of his arms was propped up under his head on a pillow, and a blanket partially covered his body. Tasha was similarly covered, with only part of her body under the blanket. On the other side of the bed, police found an older woman, later identified as Gail Earle, Tasha's mother. Gail was lying on her back with her head on a pillow, and was also partially covered with a blanket, as were her daughter and grandson. When police searched Michael's home, they came across Bryn's room. Inside, they found the 12-year-old girl lying on the bed, slightly elevated and partially covered with a blanket. When they entered Amon's room, police found a 7-year-old boy lying face down in the corner. Notably, unlike his siblings, he had no pillow or blanket. Sienna, Amon's twin sister, was found in her bedroom, lying on her left side on the bed with her head on a pillow, covered with a blanket. Michael's oldest child, Macy, 17, was also found on the bed, her head on a pillow and her body covered with a blanket. Police later located Michael in the basement gym, where he was lying on a sleeping bag. Each of the 8 victims suffered fatal gunshot wounds. It didn't take long for police to identify Michael Haight as the prime suspect. They believe he killed his wife, mother-in-law, and 5 children before taking his own life. As the investigation began, a neighbor shared important information that helped police create a timeline of events. The neighbor reported that she woke up at 3:30 a.m. to use the bathroom and heard a loud bang that sounded like fireworks. However, she knew that the day fireworks were allowed in the neighborhood had passed, which made her feel uneasy. The neighbor went on to say that after the first bang, she heard 2 more bangs in quick succession. This noise was followed by a short pause, then several more bangs. Police suspect that the loud noises the neighbor heard around 3:30 a.m. were related to the brutal murder that occurred that night, which they believe was committed by Michael. During the investigation, police learned that a non-family member had reported the abuse to the Department of Child Services in 2020. The person spoke with Macy, then 14, and she shared her fears about her father, leading to a further investigation into the Michael family. After receiving the report, child welfare and child protection agencies interviewed Macy and her parents separately. During Macy's interview, she shared alarming details. She mentioned instances where her father choked her, leaving her in fear for her life. Macy revealed that these violent incidents began in 2017. One incident involved her father grabbing her by the shoulders and pushing her against a piece of wooden furniture. When police spoke with Macy's father, Michael, he denied harming his daughter. He downplayed the seriousness of the incidents Macy described, calling them a misunderstanding. Michael attributed his emotional state to the death of his father and his brother's recent divorce. Michael admitted to taking his frustrations out on his eldest daughter. However, his wife, Tasha, chose not to file a criminal complaint against him. After an investigation, Child Protective Services, the Enoch Police Department, and the Iron County District Attorney's Office also decided not to prosecute because the case did not meet the criteria for prosecution. Additionally, a fatality assessment was conducted with Tasha, and according to her response, it did not indicate that her relationship with Michael was fatal. However, victim support services were provided to Tasha and the children in the months after the case was opened. Through conversations with Tasha's friends, the police developed a different view of Michael than the one he presented to the public. When visiting Tasha, her friends would often leave the kitchen faucet on to hide their conversations because Tasha suspected Michael was eavesdropping. To avoid giving Michael a reason to yell at Tasha, her friends would also help her with housework. Whenever they texted Tasha, she would reply with short, positive messages, possibly knowing that Michael might be reading them. This behavior suggested that Tasha was trying to maintain a positive appearance in front of Michael, implying that their marriage was not in trouble. Police investigating the case discovered that Michael displayed a high level of control over his wife, Tasha. He exercised this control in a variety of ways, including confiscating her car keys and phone to restrict her freedom. Additionally, Michael's reaction when Tasha purchased a $30 rug from Walmart to replace her dirty carpet raised further suspicions about his behavior. Tasha needed to buy a rug, but her husband, Michael, was angry and said it was a waste of money. Tasha talked to her friends about how her 7-year-old son, Amon, had begun to act like his father, imitating his father's bad behavior. When Tasha asked Amon to do something, he would say, "That's not my job," which worried Tasha because it showed that Amon was not taking responsibility and was not listening to her. This is similar to how Michael often ignores or dismisses Tasha's requests, and it seems that Amon is adopting similar habits. In 2022, Tasha made the rare decision to get a manicure as an act of self-care. However, her husband, Michael, objected and tried to limit her freedom. Despite this, Tasha still felt younger and more confident after getting her nails done. She decided to make this a monthly habit, but Michael strongly objected because of cost concerns. Tasha explained that it would only cost $25 a month, but Michael was still unconvinced. He argued that spending money on her nails would take away from the needs of her children, demonstrating a controlling attitude and a strong sense of financial responsibility. At the same time, Tasha began taking better care of herself and losing weight. This came after years of her husband, Michael, calling her fat and ugly. However, instead of being supportive, Michael becomes angry when she loses weight. He accuses her of being unfaithful, trying to explain away her change in appearance. Michael's controlling behavior escalates as he tries to order Tasha to stop losing weight. He begs her to stop because he fears that other men will find her attractive. This demand stems from his own deep insecurities and his need to control his wife's body and actions. Tasha's friends report an incident involving the family's kitchen table to the police. The table is broken and Tasha needs to replace it. However, her husband, Michael, refuses to provide the necessary funds. Frustrated by the situation, Tasha decides to take matters into her own hands. She decides to refurbish the old table, hoping to improve its appearance and functionality. Michael is unhappy with this decision because Tasha did not ask for his permission. This is not the first time this has happened. During the holiday season, Michael was very frugal with the family finances. Despite earning a substantial income from his job at All 8, he only gave $100 to each child for Christmas gifts. Tasha always wanted to give her children a full Christmas, but Michael's reluctance to add money made this difficult. He believed his income was legitimate and did not feel the need to provide more for the family. Michael's intense focus on reducing waste and conserving resources leads him to impose strict household rules on Tasha. She is required to wash and reuse plastic bags, no matter how many times they have been used. This adds to Tasha's responsibilities, leaving her feeling overwhelmed. Additionally, Michael's need for control also affects Tasha's hygiene and childcare habits. Michael requires Tasha to use wipes and, claiming that it is better for the environment and will save money. However, this makes Tasha feel uncomfortable and stressed. If she does not follow Michael's instructions, he will punish her severely. He makes it clear that disobedience will lead to a lot of trouble for her. This threat creates a sense of fear and submission in Tasha, leaving her with no choice but to comply with Michael's demands. According to Tasha's friends, she shared with them that Michael's abuse was initially directed at her during their marriage. However, in the late 2010s, Michael began abusing their children as well. Macy suffered greatly as the abuse escalated. Michael put a lot of pressure on Macy to get straight A's. The burden of these unrealistic expectations became too much for Macy to bear. Macy's friends reported another disturbing incident to the police. One evening, Michael came home to find Macy sitting with her head in her mother's lap. He became angry and told Macy to get up and clean her room. This left Macy deeply disturbed, as she recalled looking into her father's eyes and seeing hatred and evil. Police also discovered an incident involving 7-year-old Briley, who was playing with a changing table and would not stop when Michael told her to stop. This led Michael to blame his wife, Tasha, for their children's behavior, calling them the worst kids in the world, disrespectful and horrible. Furthermore, Michael would insult Tasha, calling her fat and ugly, all in front of their 5 children. Tasha decided to end her 20-year marriage to Michael after his abusive behavior and uncontrollable rages. This event made her realize the harm it was causing their children, and she knew she had to leave the marriage. Although the divorce was difficult for Tasha after 2 decades together, she prioritized the safety and well-being of her children over her commitment to the marriage. On December 21, 2022, Tasha filed for divorce from her husband, Michael. However, she requested that the divorce papers be delivered after the holidays, wanting one last normal Christmas for her 5 children before separating. Tasha anticipated that Michael's behavior would worsen once the papers were delivered, and she sought to shield their children from potential repercussions during the holidays. The divorce papers were delivered to Michael at his office on December 27th. Michael contacted Tasha and conversed as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. During the call, he asked Tasha to leave their home but demanded that she leave their children behind. Tasha was adamant that she would not leave without the children. Tasha took the children to her mother's house in Lynn, Utah, despite Michael's objections. That evening, Michael went to his mother-in-law's house and asked Tasha to go out with him, but she refused. Tasha told friends that she felt uneasy being alone with Michael. After Tasha filed for divorce, her mother, Gail Earle, moved in to support Tasha and the children. However, Michael's behavior made the situation worse. Instead of leaving the house, Michael moved into the basement, which also served as a gym. He slept on a sleeping bag on the floor, used a pillow, and hung his clothes on a hanger on a couch outside the door. Tasha shared her concerns with her friends about a major problem she had discovered. She discovered that $220,000 had disappeared from the children's savings accounts. After further investigation, she discovered that Michael was responsible for secretly transferring money without telling her. Additionally, Tasha inherited several weapons from her late father, including shotguns and handguns. However, in early January 2023, she noticed that all of these weapons were missing from her home. A subsequent investigation revealed that Michael had taken these weapons, leaving Tasha and her family unprotected and vulnerable in the event of an emergency. Macy, the eldest daughter of Michael and Tasha, has told several friends that she supports her parents' divorce. She feels that the presence of her father, Michael, in the home has caused tension and she wishes for peace in the separation. Macy has even taken steps to document her father's behavior, secretly recording him with a hidden phone when he acts erratically. She has confided to a friend that she is gathering evidence to support her parents' divorce. However, her mother, Tasha, found the phone and took it away. Macy's younger sister, Briley, faced a difficult home life due to constant trouble. To escape, Briley often went to a neighbor's house, where she found comfort in playing with the neighbor's grandchildren, who were children about her age. She told a friend that she was really relieved when her parents got divorced and was even looking forward to buying some new books, but she didn't dare tell her father because she was afraid he would be angry. On January 3, 2023, Tasha met with her attorney to discuss her divorce from her abusive husband Michael. At the time, Michael was still living in the family home, but had recently moved into the basement, which provided Tasha with some relief. Her attorneys asked her if she ever felt concerned for her safety or that of her children because of Michael's erratic behavior. Despite Michael's occasional outbursts, Tasha told her attorneys that she never felt her safety or that of her children was threatened. In retrospect, it is clear that Tasha's optimism and misplaced trust in her husband were tragically misplaced. The investigation into the shooting of Michael Haight's family was a difficult and disturbing process for police as they reconstructed the events that led to the tragedy. A chilling discovery emerged from digital evidence collected from the family's computers and cell phones. On December 30th, just days before the shooting, Michael made a disturbing Google search at 10:41 p.m. He searched for information about guns and shootings, which, combined with other evidence, suggested a dark intent. Search queries included questions about how loud a 9mm gun is, how to recognize a gunshot, and what to do if you hear a gunshot in your neighborhood. In a letter Michael wrote before he took his own life, he said he would rather rot in hell than endure what he described as his wife's controlling behavior. Michael expressed that he could not endure the situation for another day and was determined to end the manipulation and control he had endured. Michael's letter expressed deep frustration and despair. He had repeatedly asked for help, but no one seemed to listen. In this letter, Michael emphasized his determination not to become a burden to society. The details of the letter he left behind shocked and disbelieving many. Michael's actions were calculated and premeditated. He had planned the murder carefully, ensuring that his wife and children would not find out until it was too late. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sierra Juffin. Sierra Juffin is a young girl who gets along with everyone. She has a cheerful, humorous, and energetic personality that brings joy to those around her. Even when she makes mistakes, she knows how to make her mother smile. As she grows up and enters high school, Sierra has maintained her adventurous spirit. She is not afraid to try new experiences, such as playing volleyball, and she is comfortable and confident both on and off the court. On July 19, 2016, Juffin's family returned home from vacation and started unpacking. Sierra was excited about her upcoming fall semester at university, especially her plans to study abroad. Her mother wanted to talk to her about it. Sierra is very active and recently bought a bike, but she hasn't had the chance to ride it yet. Whenever she finds some free time, she's eager to go biking. That day, Sierra left the house dressed casually in shorts and a tank top, with her hair in a ponytail. She told her mother she was going to visit her boyfriend Josh, who lives 712 miles away, and her mother approved of her plan. At approximately 1:05 p.m., Josh called Sierra's house. He was concerned because he couldn't reach her. Her phone went straight to voicemail. When Josh asked Sierra's mother if she was home, she replied that Sierra wasn't home. Josh then informed Sierra's mother that Sierra had left his house shortly before 7 p.m. and that he hadn't seen or heard from her since. Sierra's mother immediately sensed that something was wrong because Sierra wasn't answering her phone as she usually did. She quickly contacted Sierra's parents and grandparents, who lived nearby, but they had no idea where Sierra was. Extremely worried about their daughter's safety, Sierra's and Josh's families began an urgent search. Sierra's mother immediately got in the car and was determined to search everywhere possible. She carefully checked every corner and both sides of the road, but still could not find any trace of Sierra. Meanwhile, Sierra's aunt, along with her husband and son, also joined the search. They were worried that Sierra might have had an accident. Despite their best efforts, they still could not find any sign of her. When Sierra's mother returned home, she urgently contacted Sierra's friends via social media, hoping that someone had seen or heard news about her. However, there was no response. After many hours, there was still no sign of Sierra. Very worried, Sierra's mother decided to call the police. Just an hour later, a neighbor called to report that County Road 6 was blocked. Sierra's family rushed out of their home to see what was happening. They found a chaotic scene, with police officers refusing to let them through and providing no information. This left Sierra's mother in a panic, wondering if the police had found her missing daughter. Desperate for information, local police decided to seek the assistance of the FBI. EY promised to provide any updates to Sierra's family as soon as possible. Sierra's family couldn't sleep and lay awake, thinking about what they should do the next day. Sierra's mother and aunt refused to wait for answers and took matters into their own hands. Her mother began calling hospitals, hoping to find any sign of Sierra. After several calls with no results, they felt increasingly hopeless. However, a glimmer of hope appeared when they received a tip from Detroit, Michigan, about a young girl who bore a striking resemblance to Sierra. That woman was taken to the hospital without any identification after trying to escape from a moving car. She was severely injured, with multiple broken bones. In order to identify her, a nurse asked Sierra's family to check her body. Sierra's mother confirmed that Sierra had a scar on her calf and a pierced navel. The woman in the hospital appeared to match Sierra's description. Sierra's family hoped that the girl in the hospital was Sierra. However, they quickly discovered that it was not her, which was devastating for them, as they had pinned so much hope on finding Sierra. The next morning, police came to Sierra's home to provide an update on the events of the previous night. They reported that one of their officers had discovered a destroyed cornfield nearby. When he arrived at the area, he noticed signs of a struggle. He also saw traces of a motorcycle and decided not to disturb any evidence. During the incident, he caught a glimpse of Sierra's purple bicycle. Police later found several items at the scene, including both men's and women's sunglasses, a pair of bloody socks, and a screwdriver. Based on these findings, the police believe Sierra was abducted at this location. During the investigation, detectives extensively interviewed Sierra's friends and family to gather information about her boyfriend, Josh. Through their inquiries, they discovered that Sierra and Josh had been best friends since they were 7 years old. Their friendship eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship during their freshman year of high school, where they were known to be a lively and fun-loving couple. One of their shared passions was skiing, which they often enjoyed together. After graduating from high school, Sierra chose to attend the University of Toledo, while Josh enrolled at Bowling Green. Despite the distance, their commitment to their relationship remained strong, and they frequently discussed the prospect of marriage. However, Sierra wanted to prioritize her studies before settling down. Their relationship remained serious, and they had weathered the challenges of a long-distance relationship. Detectives determined that Sierra arrived at Josh's home at approximately 1 p.m. on July 19th. According to the information they gathered, at around 6:30 p.m. that day, Sierra decided to leave Josh's home and wanted to ride her bike home. Concerned for her safety, Josh offered to accompany her on his motorcycle. On the way home, Sierra insisted that Josh turn around and let her walk home by herself, wanting to demonstrate her independence. Josh reluctantly agreed, and they parted ways, with him returning on his motorcycle and Sierra continuing her ride home. During the investigation, detectives found motorcycle tracks in the corn near Sierra's bike. This raised the question of whether these tracks could belong to Josh's bike. Detectives could not ignore this potential connection and began gathering more evidence to determine if there was any link to Josh at the scene. They quickly organized a search team to look for any clues about Sierra's missing. On July 14th, a resident reported that, while driving down the road, they picked up a motorcycle helmet lying on the side of the road. When they heard about Sierra's situation, they decided to take a closer look at the helmet and found red stains on it, possibly blood. The helmet was found in the area near where Sierra's bike was located in the cornfield. To find the owner of the helmet, the police approached Josh regarding his motorcycle helmet. Josh provided the helmet, proving that he had been wearing it when he went out. Additionally, the police confirmed that Josh had returned home after interrogating his parents. This evidence eliminated Josh from the list of suspects involved in Sierra's missing. Investigators were determined to identify the owner of the blood-stained motorcycle helmet found on the side of the road. They recognized the importance of DNA evidence, so they decided to send it to the crime lab for analysis. News of Sierra's missing quickly spread through the community. Residents formed search parties to thoroughly explore the area for any clues that could help locate her. The community also organized a candlelight vigil for Sierra at the local high school. Hundreds attended, holding flickering candles, as they came together in a display of grief, hope to her safe return. 2 days into the investigation into Sierra's missing, police received information about a truck seen speeding through the area. There was speculation that Sierra might have been kidnapped and sexually trafficked in the truck. The informant provided the police with the license plate number. Based on this clue, they interviewed the truck's owner. It was discovered that the speeding truck was not related to Sierra's abduction. The man explained that another car had suddenly pulled up from behind, possibly a family member searching for Sierra, which startled him. Consequently, he instinctively accelerated. After 48 hours of investigation, there were no leads on Sierra's whereabouts. Her family found it increasingly difficult to remain hopeful as each day passed and the chances of finding her alive diminished. Although they tried to remain optimistic, the grim reality of the situation became increasingly hard to ignore. The police conducted a door-to-door search for Sierra. Eventually, the investigation led them to a farm not far from where her bicycle was found. The property was about an acre in size and included several structures, such as a small house, a trailer, and a large barn. The owner of the property, James Worley, was met by the police at the farm and was questioned about the day Sierra went missing, hoping to gather relevant information. James surprisingly revealed that he had gone out on a motorbike that day, but the bike had broken down, causing him to lose some items, such as a screwdriver and a helmet. This revelation shocked the detectives, as those items were the same ones found at the scene of Sierra's abduction. James's unwitting involvement in the crime scene became a red flag for the detectives. Sierra's missing and her connection to James were becoming increasingly suspicious. While questioning James Worley, the detectives noticed scratches on his face, indicating that he had been involved in a fight. This further intensified the police's suspicions regarding James and raised numerous questions, such as whether the scratches were the result of a confrontation with Sierra. Detectives returned to the police station after questioning James Worley about Sierra's missing. They wanted to check his file, hoping to find relevant information. As they dug into James's past, they discovered that he had a dark criminal record, which included an attempted kidnapping of a young girl 26 years earlier, on July 4, 1989. On July 4, 1989, 26-year-old Robin Garter planned to attend a neighborhood picnic. Her mother was preparing potato salad and other food for the event. Robin thought it would be a good idea to go for a bike ride before the picnic. However, she had not brought any water with her, and it was getting very hot and uncomfortable. At that point, Robin considered going home to quench her thirst. Just as she was about to leave, she heard the sound of a car approaching. Robin figured she would wait for the car to pass and then go home. But before she could react, the car struck her bicycle. After the collision, Robin was hauled into the ditch by the side of the road. Dazed and confused, she still heard the driver stop and run out to check on her. The driver was none other than James, approached Robin anxiously, trying to assess the situation. The situation quickly became very dangerous. James suddenly struck Robin from behind, hitting her head very hard. Then, he pressed a screwdriver to her neck, threatening her life with menacing words. He ordered Robin to get into his car immediately. With the screwdriver pressed to her neck, James forced Robin into the car. After pushing her inside, he attempted to handcuff her. However, Robin resisted strongly, not allowing him to secure the second handcuff. Despite her screams for help, there was no one in the deserted field to hear her cries. Robin's persistent struggle against him caused her to nearly faint several times, but she persevered. In the unusual silence, she suddenly heard a faint sound in the distance. And she looked closely. She noticed a motorbike approaching James's vehicle. Realizing that this might be her only chance to escape, Robin began waving her arms repeatedly to attract the motorcyclist's attention. Fortunately, the motorcyclist recognized her urgency and quickly stopped. In her desperate plea for help, Robin told the motorcyclist that James intended to kidnap her. Without hesitation, she climbed onto the back of the motorbike, escaping her captor and the vehicle. The man on the motorbike took Robin home, where she eventually fainted. Robin's mother called the police and an ambulance. The motorcyclist, wanting to assist the authorities, led the police back to the scene. They were surprised to find James Worley still there with his car. When questioned, James was cooperative and provided identification to confirm his identity. However, his version of the story differed significantly from what was initially believed. He completely denied any intention to kidnap Robin. According to James, Robin had been riding her bike erratically, swerving into the road, which left him unable to avoid a collision. He claimed that after the accident, Robin was in a state of panic, which was why he had handcuffed her, not with the intention of causing harm, but to tie her to the steering wheel of his truck while he sought help. He insisted that his actions were motivated solely by genuine concern for her well-being. James Worley was arrested in 1989 after attempting to kidnap Robin. He was convicted of kidnapping and subsequently incarcerated in the state prison in Mansfield, Ohio. James was sentenced to 6 to 10 years in prison but was released 3 years later for good behavior. When Robin learned that the man who had tried to kidnap her was released, she was terrified. The fear that James might strike again haunted her. Armed with information about James Worley's criminal past, the police decided to visit his residence. With a search warrant in hand, the officers went to the home of James, who was suspected of being involved in Sierra's missing. They found nothing unusual in the house. However, when they examined James's backyard, they discovered a small shed tucked away in the corner. Upon opening the shed, they found several bales of hay inside. The officers conducted a thorough search of the barn and the surrounding area, looking for evidence that could link James to Sierra's missing. All areas were searched meticulously, with the aim of uncovering any hidden items or clues. During the search, the detectives found a small green box hidden in a corner of James Worley's barn. They carefully approached and opened the box, revealing its contents. Inside, they found several carefully labeled and sealed bags containing underwear, socks, and tube tops in Ziploc plastic bags. As they examined the other items, they came across a pair of purple panties stained with a blood-like substance. The detectives were concerned about other disturbing discoveries that might await them in their search of James's compound. The detectives noticed a piece of plywood on the ground. Recognizing its potential importance, they carefully removed the board to reveal a small chest freezer buried in the barn. When they opened the freezer, they detected a strong chemical odor similar to bleach, which heightened their suspicions. As they continued to investigate, they found other disturbing elements partially hidden among the straw bales. Among the items discovered was a dirty mattress pad. The presence of zip ties, duct tape, handcuffs, and keys intensified their concerns, as these items are often associated with kidnappings and other nefarious activities. Detectives collected all the evidence for DNA testing. James attempted to defend himself by claiming that the items were part of a pornographic entertainment business he was planning. However, the evidence gathered was far too overwhelming to support his explanation. The combination of evidence collected from the crime scene, along with the incriminating items, led to James' arrest for Sierra's murder. Sierra's family was shocked to learn that her abductor lived far from her home. This revelation left them with many questions, the most pressing of which was undoubtedly, where was she? Detectives conducted a thorough investigation of James' property, leaving no stone unturned. They meticulously searched every inch of the property to ensure a comprehensive examination. To aid in the search dogs were brought in to detect any potential human remains. During the investigation, detectives discovered a pond. Recognizing its potential significance, they carefully drained the pond to search for evidence that might have been concealed beneath the water. Detectives examined the insulation at the front of the attic. As the investigation continued, they expanded their search to neighboring properties, realizing that evidence might be scattered outside James's property. They patiently pursued leads in all directions. At that time, a farmer walking in his field noticed a strange area of corn that appeared to be covered. He decided to investigate further. As he approached the area, he saw a mound of dirt and immediately thought it could be a grave. The farmer's concerns were heightened by the recent events surrounding the search for Sierra. He wasted no time in calling the police, sharing his suspicions and the exact location. When the farmer called for help, the police arrived on the scene. They noticed a newly turned area of dirt, which led them to suspect it could be a grave. After carefully assessing the situation, the police began investigating the area, taking care not to disturb any potential evidence. The police conducted a thorough search of the scene, hoping to find clues about Sierra's whereabouts. However, despite their best efforts, their search was fruitless. Detectives expanded their search, using drones and helicopters to survey nearby farms in hopes of increasing air chances of finding Sierra. During their investigation, the detectives discovered an area of land covered with fresh corn. Their dogs detected the smell of decomposition, suggesting that this could be a crime scene. When investigators dug into the area, they discovered the remains of a person. Based on the evidence, it was believed that this was Sierra's body. Unfortunately, her hands and feet were bound, and there was a foreign object lodged in her mouth, making it difficult for her to breathe. The evidence suggested that she had died of asphyxiation. That night, Sierra's family received the devastating news they had feared. The police had found Sierra's lifeless body. The news was heartbreaking, and the family wept. It was a tragic moment, and they were overwhelmed with grief. A month after Sierra's abduction and murder, James Worley was indicted on 19 related charges, including kidnapping and aggravated murder. 2 years later, James went to trial on these charges. Despite overwhelming evidence against him, James pleaded not guilty to all counts. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning their verdict in James Worley's case. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, James was convicted on all counts related to Sierra's murder. The severity of the crime resulted in the imposition of the death penalty for James Worley. In conclusion, the harrowing case of Sierra Juffin has come to a tragic end, revealing the dark depths of human cruelty and the devastating impact it can have on a family and community. The relentless pursuit of justice led to the discovery of Sierra's remains and the conviction of James Worley, whose past offenses and heinous actions were instrumental in bringing him to justice. As Sierra's family continues to mourn their loss, they can find some measure of solace in knowing that James Worley has been held accountable. This case serves as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and the enduring fight for our justice in the face of profound tragedy. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Sheila LaBar. Sheila LaBar was born in Fort Payne, Alabama on July 4, 1958. She was the youngest of 3 children and grew up on a farm surrounded by cornfields with her siblings, including her older brother and sister Lynn. According to Lynn, her older sibling, Sheila was an energetic, inquisitive, and creative girl. She loved being the center of attention, had a beautiful singing voice, and was very pretty. Her father Manuel Bailey's struggle with alcoholism had a profound impact on his family, especially his children, during their formative years. When affected, he became extremely aggressive and abusive, directing his anger at his wife and children. He would insult and humiliate them, attack them with any available object, and even force them to sleep outdoors, enduring the elements. Many times, Manuel's wife and children had no choice but to seek shelter in barns or fields, enduring harsh weather conditions such as heavy rain or freezing temperatures. Manuel's violent outbursts were a regular occurrence in the family. On one occasion, he threw dishes and objects at family members in a drunken rage. The mother tried to shield her children but was unsuccessful. A flower pot hit the youngest daughter, Sheila, in the head, causing her a severe concussion and leaving a permanent scar on her temple that she later covered with her hair. However, physical abuse was not the only trauma the sisters endured. According to Sheila and Lynn's memories, Manuel forced them into forced sex from a young age. Even though the mother may have known what was going on, she never addressed the problem or sought help for her daughters. Sheila studied very well, finding solace in her academic achievements in the midst of a difficult family life. She dreamed of escaping the countryside to pursue her ambitions in the city. With fierce determination and intense passion, Sheila aspired to realize her childhood dream in life and become an actress or a pop singer. She had everything for this: charisma, bright appearance, and a wonderful voice. Sheila's upbringing was tumultuous. At the age of 18, she left her parents' house, but adult life was difficult. She did not pass the university entrance exam because of her average grades, and she simply did not have the money to move to the big city. Therefore, Sheila took a job as a maid in a hotel where her sister worked. Sheila had a slim figure and a very attractive appearance, big blue eyes, a charming smile, and long, thick hair. She was given attention by men, and over time, she learned to use that attention and manipulate her suitors. Sheila met Jonathan Baxter in the late 1970s, and they began a romantic relationship. Although Jonathan was not yet 20 years old, he had a young daughter from a previous relationship. However, the child did not become a barrier, and the couple soon married. However, their marriage did not last long and ended in divorce within a few months. The reason for the breakup was Sheila's treatment of Jonathan's daughter. She often became frustrated with the child and resorted to physical discipline, such as hitting her, or isolation, such as locking her in a closet when the child misbehaved or cried. When Jonathan discovered this, he was extremely distressed and immediately filed for divorce. He acted quickly, removing Sheila and her belongings from the house and making it clear that he never wanted to see or hear from her again. After the divorce, Sheila continued to date many men, and she often relied on them financially, but these relationships did not last long, lasting only a few weeks to a few months. However, in the early 1980s, she met Ronnie Jennings, who would later become her second husband. Their tumultuous love affair soon led to marriage. Unfortunately, it was an unhealthy relationship between two erratic and unstable people who often cheated on each other, caused scandals, and even fought. However, their marriage lasted more than 3 years. In 1984, after an argument, Sheila asked her husband for a divorce. But he refused. However, Ronnie's motive behind refusing her request was not to save the relationship. He just wanted to irritate his wife and drive her crazy. He succeeded. Sheila became hysterical, took a large amount of drugs in front of her husband, drank strong alcohol, and after this terrifying cocktail, got behind the wheel and drove off the road. As expected, Sheila lost consciousness shortly after and drove off the road at high speed, crashing into a tree. Despite the severity of the accident, Sheila miraculously survived, although she suffered severe head injuries that left her in a deep coma for over a week. During this time, medical professionals were unable to give any prognosis for her recovery. Sheila eventually recovered from her coma and was transferred to a psychiatric hospital, where she remained for several months. She later complained to her sister that one of the attendants was constantly harassing her. After all this, she was discharged from the hospital and returned to her second husband's home. But her behavior became increasingly erratic. She began to act aggressively and threaten him, culminating in a violent outburst in which she attacked Ronnie with nail scissors, stabbing him in the chest. Fearing for her safety and well-being, Ronnie filed for divorce and quickly moved away, ending their tumultuous relationship. After her second divorce, Sheila began looking for a lover through the dating columns of print newspapers and left her information there. She posted her information herself in the hope of meeting someone special, but her relationships did not last long. The reason was that she had a controlling personality, often dominating her partners in both her private and daily life. One day, a 60-year-old man named Wilfred Bill Labar happened to see her picture in the dating section. A twice-divorced man, Wilfred raised his children and grandchildren from previous marriages. After losing his wife a few years ago, he lived a solitary life on his large rural farm. Wilfred, a wealthy man from New Hampshire, owned a chiropractic practice and a horse farm. Despite his successful life, he still felt lonely and longed for a partner. It was then that he met Sheila, who was attracted by Wilfred's wealth and saw an opportunity for her. To attract his attention, Sheila began sending him provocative letters and photos through the post. Her plan worked, and soon Wilfred invited her to visit his farm. Their romance quickly blossomed, with Wilfred showering her with expensive gifts. In the summer of 1987, Sheila moved in with him. Wilfred Bill LaBar had no plans to marry Sheila. However, without waiting for his proposal, Sheila changed her name, calling herself LaBar. Bill was surprised by this development, but he did not object. As their relationship progressed, Sheila began to control Wilfred's life, including his business, finances, and property. Due to the significant age difference, Wilfred had a hard time satisfying Sheila's need for intimacy. According to Sheila, Wilfred allowed her to see other men, and she often brought her lovers to their homes. One of Sheila's lovers, who was in his mid-90s, was a Jamaican citizen named Wayne Ennis. He was much younger than Sheila and was initially hired as a nanny at the farm. Wayne eventually moved into the main house with Wilfred's consent, possibly under pressure from Sheila. Sheila and Wayne married in 1995 with an agreement that they would be monogamous, and Wayne assumed that from then on, he would be her only man. However, he soon realized that he was wrong as his wife continued to see other men. Wayne was not happy with this, and one day, he punched and kicked Sheila and her next lover, injuring them. Sheila, accustomed to being dominated, was the first time she had been attacked by someone else. She eventually filed for divorce and obtained a court order to prevent Wayne from approaching her, accusing him of violence and assault. Sheila's life remained volatile despite the divorce, as she continued to have affairs, frequently ending old relationships in favor of new ones. However, her relationships became increasingly complicated, often ending in lawsuits from her ex-partners who accused her of cruelty, threatening their lives, and causing physical harm. In one case, an ex-boyfriend claimed she deliberately hit him with her car, narrowly avoiding serious injury. Another accused her of fracturing his skull, while a third partner was left permanently scarred by lacerations to his face. As Sheila got older, her behavior became increasingly dangerous to those around her. She demanded absolute obedience from her partners, and when this expectation was not met, she often flew into rages. Wilfred Bill LaBar then died in 2000 of heart failure at the age of 74. Although doctors and police found no evidence of foul play in his death, his family believed that Sheila had something to do with it. According to them, she had been poisoning Bill little by little over the years, effectively driving him to his death. After Wilfred's death, Sheila became the sole beneficiary of his estate, even though the couple had never formally married. Relatives tried to challenge this through the courts, but never got anywhere. They still believe that Sheila forced him to write a will. She wanted the house after Wilfred's death. After inheriting his entire estate, Sheila was free to do whatever she wanted without having to consider anyone else's opinion. She called her home a place of glamour and pleasure, where there were no inhibitions. And she began picking up men on the streets, in bars, on the internet, luring them to her and then trying to keep them at the farm for as long as possible. She didn't care about their age, skin color, or appearance. Sheila lured these men with promises of extraordinary pleasure and then tried to dominate and control them. Neighbors noticed that there were many different men constantly coming to the farm, but many left that day, while others stayed for a short time. The activities inside the house were shrouded in mystery. Sheila then turned her focus to finding sexual partners among men who were in financial trouble, needed a place to live, or were struggling with addiction. These people are easy targets for Sheila's manipulation tactics, as she presents herself as a wealthy widow, bragging about her supposed inheritance from 2004. A homeless man named Michael DeLog is struggling with addiction when he meets Sheila on a city street. Due to his circumstances, his family tries to get him into rehab, but he escapes from the treatment center. Michael's weakness leads him to accept Sheila's offer, who promises him food, shelter, and the stimulants he desires in exchange for a physical relationship. Moving to the farm, Michael becomes completely dependent on his lover. Afraid of being on the streets again, he complies with her every demand, and Sheila's desires become more sophisticated. She binds, beats, and humiliates Michael, taking pleasure in it. He tried to escape several times, walking dozens of miles and hiding in homeless shelters, but he never decided to go to the police for fear they would not believe him. Sheila repeatedly found Michael and brought him back to the farm. In desperation, he tried to contact his family members and let them know he was in trouble. They responded immediately, but unfortunately, it was too late. In October 2005, Michael DeLog mysteriously disappeared. When his family contacted Sheila, she claimed that they had broken up and Michael had left her, not knowing where he was. Despite efforts to find him, Michael was nowhere to be seen and no one he knew had seen him. Unfortunately, attempts to contact him were unsuccessful and the police report was fruitless, and Sheila remained unsuspected. While her house and car needed maintenance, so she was forced to find work. She chose a career that suited her, becoming an operator for intimate telephone services, using her charming voice to make a living. A man named Kenneth County, then 24 years old, fell into the trap and agreed to meet her in person. Kenneth was an attractive young man, kind and open, but he had one major weakness: his low IQ made him extremely gullible. This made him Sheila's ideal target. Kenneth was very close to his mother, financially dependent on her, but Sheila skillfully manipulated him, creating a rift between them and finally conquered him. She gave him an unforgettable night of love and promised that they would be like this all the time. The young man decided that he had met the woman of his dreams. He informed his relatives, and then moved into Sheila's house. After that, Sheila severely and relentlessly abused Kenneth. She had turned one of the rooms in her house into a torture chamber, where she regularly beat Kenneth severely and subjected him to other forms of physical and mental abuse. As a result, Kenneth's body was covered in numerous injuries, including bruises, abrasions, cuts, and burns. Kenneth was completely under Sheila's control and was not allowed to contact his loved ones. His family had no idea what was happening to him and could only speculate about his condition. It was only when neighbors occasionally saw Kenneth and were shocked by his frail appearance that the alarm was raised. Just days before Kenneth went missing, a local store employee took a disturbing photo of him with his cell phone, which was later used as evidence in court. The photo showed Kenneth extremely thin, with large bruises under his eyes and on his cheeks, and what appeared to be a broken nose, judging by the extent of the healing. All of these injuries occurred at different times, suggesting that he had been severely beaten over a long period of time. When he went to a store, the items in his trolley were disturbing: 2 large fuel drums, which were later discovered to have been used to cremate him. The store staff were confused and frightened by his appearance, so they contacted the police, suspecting a possible domestic violence incident. However, Sheila escaped and they were unable to charge her. Eventually, Kenneth lost contact with his family, and when his worried mother visited him at the farm owner, Sheila, responded aggressively and advised her to leave Kenneth alone, prompting Kenneth's family to file a missing person report. Expressing concern that he might be being held against his will at the farm. When the police arrived at Sheila's home, they witnessed a crematorium and disturbing discoveries. Sheila claimed that Kenneth had moved away because his mother, whom he said was afraid of him, had begun visiting regularly. To back up her claim, Sheila provided a recording in which she asked Kenneth if his mother had attacked him, and he quietly replied yes. The police found Sheila's story suspicious, and the next day, a police officer who visited Sheila obtained a search warrant for the estate. This was not the first time Sheila had attracted the attention of the police. She had been implicated in the mysterious disappearance of another boyfriend in the past. However, despite her past, Sheila had never been questioned or had her property searched until now. When the police arrived, they could not find Sheila at home, but they did notice several suspicious fires burning near the outbuildings. These fires were very unusual and involved a variety of materials such as mattresses, pieces of wooden furniture, hay, and other items soaked in flammable substances. Upon closer inspection, it was discovered that one of the fires contained human remains in the form of bones. Police immediately requested additional assistance from forensic experts to document their findings, but what they discovered next was even more shocking. Police found numerous blood stains that had not been cleaned up throughout the house, indicating a violent crime had occurred. The large amount of blood suggested that a horrific massacre may have occurred. The blood found at the scene belonged to at least 3 different people. The body found in the fire was identified as that of the missing Kenneth County. 2 empty fuel cans were discovered nearby, matching the cans Kenneth had purchased at a local store the day before his disappearance. Further investigation uncovered the body of Michael DeLog, who had been missing for several years. Police also found several fingers belonging to an unidentified third person. In addition, a large number of items, believed to have belonged to several men due to their varying sizes, were recovered from the farm's storage pit, but their owners remain unknown. Sheila was not present at the time of the police visit, as she had already discovered them and planned to flee. Sheila hitchhiked to Boston to evade arrest. Along the way, she hitched a ride with a driver and eventually formed a relationship with him, leading him to invite her to stay with him. However, the next day, after watching a TV news report about a manhunt for a dangerous criminal, the driver called the police and reported that Sheila was currently in his bed. A disturbing discovery was made during the search of Sheila's home, a collection of videotapes. The recordings depicted men, including Kenneth, Michael, and several others, confessing to serious crimes. However, the men's visible distress and condition suggested that these confessions had been coerced through torture. After Sheila was arrested, concerns about her mental health prompted the court to order an evaluation. The results showed that Sheila suffered from delusional disorder and symptoms of schizophrenia. She believed that she was an angel sent from heaven to protect children from rapists. Her attorney used her poor mental health to create a defense, portraying her as terminally ill and unaware of her actions. This claim was based on severe mental and physical trauma she had suffered as a child. Sheila claimed that, years earlier, she had had a near-death experience after being in an accident and falling into a coma. During this time, she said, she encountered God and was tasked with ridding the world of men who harmed children. Sheila's ex-husbands and several of her lovers also took the stand in court, all of whom described her as insane, unstable, and extremely violent. In particular, her third husband, Wayne Anise, claimed that Sheila had repeatedly urged him to kill Wilfred Bill LaBar, apparently motivated by his desire to take his estate. However, the defense team's efforts to portray Sheila as insane and in need of psychiatric care were unsuccessful. Instead, it was determined that she was fully aware of her actions when she committed the crime. Sheila was ultimately convicted in July 2008 and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Any appeals she filed were subsequently denied. Sheila is currently serving her sentence at the Homestead Correctional Facility in Florida. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lisa Harnum. Lisa Harnum was born on June 12, 1981, in the Toronto suburbs of Canada. She was the second child in her family, raised by her single mother, Joanna, along with her older brother, Jason. The two siblings were extremely close, but their father's departure when they were very young left them with no memories of him. Growing up, Lisa was a lively and driven young girl with a strong passion for sports. She spent much of her childhood actively in various activities with her brother, including martial arts and team sports like soccer and volleyball. However, her true love was ballet. She spent hours each day at the dance studio, practicing rigorously. As she was naturally tall and slender from a young age, she initially seemed suited for ballet. Nevertheless, her professional ballet training required an extremely strict diet, which ultimately took a toll on her growing body. Lisa struggled with anorexia, an eating disorder, during her teenage years. She initially kept her condition a secret, believing she could handle the problem on her own. However, as her weight dropped to a critically low level, her mother intervened and admitted her to a clinic for treatment. Lisa spent several months in rehabilitation, focusing on regaining her health and weight. After completing her high school education, Lisa pursued her passion for dance and decided to explore a career in the beauty industry. Alongside her university studies, she worked as a perfumer for a large cosmetics chain. In her free time, she honed her makeup and hairdressing skills. In 2005, after celebrating his 24th birthday, Lisa felt an overwhelming desire for change. She wanted to leave Canada and move to Australia. Two primary reasons drove this decision. She craved a warmer climate and was eager to explore the world. To make the move possible, Lisa obtained a one-year work visa and traveled to Australia. Her mother accompanied her initially, staying for the first few months to ensure Lisa settled into her new surroundings. Once satisfied that her daughter was capable of taking care of herself, her mother returned to Toronto. Lisa made the decision to stay in Sydney permanently after her initial visa expired. To achieve this, she first extended her stay for another year. During this time, she gathered the necessary documents to apply for Australian citizenship. Outside of work, Lisa faces her own personal problems. Due to not having a father figure in her childhood, she often found herself attracted to older men. She often seeks concern from more mature men. Lisa's personal and professional life began to fall into place when she landed a job at a Sydney cosmetics company in 2006. She soon started dating a coworker who was nearly twice her age. As their relationship progressed, they decided to move in together, and Lisa relocated to his apartment. A few months later, they took the next step, and Lisa introduced her boyfriend to her mother and brother. And they accepted her choice. The couple traveled extensively, visiting destinations like the Seychelles and Paris, and even attending Rio de Janeiro's famous carnival. At one point, the man proposed to Lisa, and she happily accepted. However, their engagement was short-lived. About a year later, the couple broke up. While Lisa didn't reveal the specific reasons for their split, but she hinted that their age difference was a major factor. In 2010, Lisa completed her education at the Sydney College of Stylists. She secured a job as a hairdresser at a well-known beauty salon, where she quickly gained the respect of her colleagues and the trust of her clients. During this time, Lisa starts dating a new boyfriend. However, it came to a swift end when she discovered he was married. As she didn't want to damage someone else's family, she ended the relationship promptly. Before the breakup, he introduced Lisa to a businessman named Simon Gitney at a party. Unfortunately, this introduction had severe consequences for Lisa. Simon Gitney was born in December 1973 in Maryland to an immigrant family from Lebanon who held strong religious beliefs. His parents raised Simon and his 5 siblings with a firm hand. Despite this, Simon struggled with managing his emotions from a young age, frequently experiencing intense anger outbursts and displaying possessive tendencies. He could not stand rejection and often resorted to violence. Simon's behavior eventually landed him in trouble with the law. Simon's first experience in jail occurred when he was 18 years old. He showed up at his ex-girlfriend's workplace and began harassing her, prompting the store owner to intervene and throw him out. Undeterred, Simon returned with friends and attacked the store owner. Simon physically assaulted him. As a result, Simon was jailed, but only served a short sentence and was eventually released on bail due to good behavior. 3 years later, Simon was arrested again, this time for robbery. Then he resisted arrest, a physical altercation broke out and he bit off part of a police officer's ear. This act put him at risk of a serious prison sentence. Fortunately, the pastor of his family's church intervened on his behalf, which led to Simon serving only a year and a half in prison. Years later, in 2000, Simon got into trouble with the law once more. He was arrested for possessing and distributing illegal substances. Despite the severity of the crime, but he received a relatively lenient sentence and served only 2 years. After his release, Simon appeared to turn his life around. He relocated to Sydney and co-founded a successful luxury women's shoe business with some friends. The business generated a substantial and steady income, quickly making Simon wealthy. He purchased a luxurious home in an upscale neighborhood and a high-end vehicle. Simon made a concerted effort to conceal his troubled past from those around him, including roommates and romantic partners. Simon and Lisa had exchanged numbers at a party, and he soon followed up with a call. They started with casual conversations. But over time these talks developed into a romance. In January 2010, Lisa confided in Simon about her dissatisfaction with her current living situation. She expressed a desire to rent an apartment in a different neighborhood. Simon generously offered her a temporary place to stay in his luxury apartment, rent-free, while she searched for a new home. Despite initial reservations from Lisa's mother, Joanna, Lisa reassured her that the arrangement was temporary and that she and Simon were just friends. At the time, Lisa assumed Simon was gay because he takes great care of his looks and used piercings, but this assumption proved to be incorrect. For the initial 2 months, Simon maintained a reserved distance from Lisa. They lived in separate rooms, and there wasn't even a hint of intimacy between them. However, but over time, they became closer, the so-called spark burned, and they started dating. When they began dating, Simon was 37, and Lisa was 28. To Lisa, Simon seemed perfect, charming, sociable, and generous. He frequently surprised her with gifts and pleasant experiences, causing her to see him as a prince in a fairy tale. As a couple, they began attending social events together, especially at an elite sports club that Simon frequents. Lisa genuinely believed she had found her soulmate and was convinced that she would spend the rest of her life happily with Simon. She happily shared her feelings with her mother, brother, and friends, but she remained oblivious to the fact that her fairy tale would soon come to an end. 6 months into their relationship, Simon's behavior began to shift in subtle ways that Lisa didn't notice at first. Unaware of the manipulation, she thinks that Simon is doing everything just for her good. However, he slowly isolated her from her friends and family, disregarded her personal boundaries, and attempted to alter her perspectives, tastes, and behavior to align with his own desires. In June 2010, shortly after Lisa's 29th birthday, Simon started pressuring her to leave her job at the beauty salon. He said that she wasn't appreciated there and she could find a higher-paying job elsewhere. However, Lisa enjoyed her work and had many loyal clients. She was also satisfied with her income and didn't see a reason to quit, so she refused Simon's suggestion. Simon was not satisfied with Lisa's decision. In August, he took drastic action. He showed up at her salon, causing a huge scandal, forcing her to quit. Despite Lisa was shocked and disappointed by Simon's behavior, but he convinced her that she no longer needed to work, as his income would be enough to support them both comfortably. He reassured her that they could afford anything they wanted and live a life of luxury. A month and a half later, Simon and Lisa moved into a high-end apartment on the 15th floor of an elite residential complex. Unbeknownst to Lisa, the apartment was filled with hidden surveillance cameras, allowing Simon to monitor her every move. He further tightened his grip on her by giving her a smartphone and laptop that he had pre-installed with spyware. The spyware enabled Simon to track Lisa's messages, emails, calls, and movements. He also gained access to her social media accounts, which he manipulated by deleting posts and photos, reading her private correspondence, and controlling her friend list. As time passed, Simon's control over Lisa grew, but he cleverly made it seem as though she was making her own decisions. In reality, he had invaded every aspect of her life, leaving her with no sense of privacy. Simon exerted control over Lisa's appearance by prohibiting her from wearing cosmetics, deeming her makeup too bold and unrefined. He also purchased unflattering clothing in dark colors, discarding her existing wardrobe due to its revealing nature, which he believed would attract unwanted male attention. Lisa's movements were restricted as well. Simon would only allow her to leave the apartment if he accompanied her, and even then, they only visited places he had selected. He also barred her from going to the gym, instead buying her expensive exercise equipment for home use, citing this as a suitable alternative. Simon's control extended to Lisa's social life, causing her to lose connections on social media. As her online connections dwindled, Simon eventually convinced her to delete her accounts altogether. Lisa had lost touch with her friends, and her interactions were under constant surveillance. The only people she was allowed to communicate with were her mother and brother, with Simon's permission. When Christmas 2010 approached, Lisa planned a trip home to Canada to spend the holiday with her family. Initially, Simon intended to join her, but then because he was busy with work, he couldn't go with her. Despite his reservations, Lisa persuaded him to let her travel alone, as she had not seen her loved ones in over a year. Simon eventually agreed, but only on the condition that she adhere to a strict set of rules he had established for her trip. Her brother Jason and her mother, Joanna, were shocked by the transformation in Lisa over the past year. Gone was the bright and cheerful beauty she once was. Her appearance had changed in every way. Without makeup, her face was barely recognizable. Her luxurious hair is tied into a ponytail and hidden under a headpiece. Her clothes were now baggy, unflattering, and black. However, it was not just her physical appearance that was alarming. Lisa's behavior had also changed significantly. She would flinch with anxiety every time the phone rang and rush to answer it instantly. This was because Simon had made it a condition for her. She had to be available to answer his calls at any time, no matter what she was doing. Lisa always stayed at her mother's house, refused to see her friends, and almost never went out, causing her mother Joanna to become extremely concerned. Joanna decided it was time to have an honest conversation with Lisa to understand why she was behaving this way. During this conversation, Lisa broke down in tears and confessed that her boyfriend Simon constantly monitored her activities, knowing who she associated with, who she talked to on the phone, and what they discussed. Lisa also revealed that Simon controlled many aspects of her life, forbidding her from working, seeing friends, going to the gym, or have any preferences. As a result, she had lost touch with all of her friends. Lisa's mother was shocked and urged her to stay in Canada, pointing out that she had no ties in Australia. However, Lisa was resolute, explaining that she loved Simon and didn't want to end their relationship. She believed their issues were temporary, given they'd only been together for less than a year, and that he would eventually calm down and become less controlling. Lisa was also convinced that Simon genuinely cared for her and wanted the best for her. Despite her family's concerns and efforts to persuade her that the relationship was unhealthy, Lisa decided to return to Australia to be with Simon. Lisa tried to ease her mother's concerns by telling her that Simon cared for her and wouldn't cause her harm. However, when Lisa went back, things took a turn for the worse. Simon restricted her from leaving their apartment and even demanded that she avoid eye contact with other men when they were out in public, insisting she keep her gaze on the ground. Furthermore, Simon started referring to Lisa by her middle name, Cecilia, because he thought it sounded more polite that way. In the spring of 2011, Lisa started experiencing pain in her leg due to an old ballet injury from her youth. Instead of taking her to a hospital, Simon arranged for a female physical therapist to visit their home 3 times a week to treat her with massages. Over time, the therapist became Lisa's closest friend and confidant, someone she trusted and shared her difficult situation with. On June 12, Lisa's 30th birthday, Simon organized a party at Sydney's most expensive restaurant, but the guest list only included his own family and close friends. Lisa was not given the opportunity to invite any of her own friends or acquaintances. As the evening came to a close, Simon surprised her by proposing and placing a ring on her finger. Lisa accepted, but her reaction was not what would have been expected. Instead of tears of happiness, she began crying tears of desperation and hopelessness. Back home, Lisa called her mother to share the news of her engagement, but her excitement quickly turned to worry as she began to sob on the phone. However, her mother, Joanna, was far from thrilled. Joanna immediately expressed her disapproval of the engagement and urged Lisa to end the relationship and return to Canada as soon as possible. Lisa pleaded with her mother to stop discussing the matter over the phone, because Simon might be eavesdropping on their conversation. Lisa tries to distract herself with thoughts about their upcoming wedding. However, when she tried to discuss the plans with Simon, he abruptly interrupted her and declared that he would make all the decisions, including choosing the venue, buying her wedding dress, and creating the guest list. This left Lisa feeling devastated and powerless. Feeling lost, she confided in her physiotherapist during a visit, confessing that she couldn't continue in the relationship but felt trapped because Simon wouldn't allow her to leave. Lisa and the masseuse devised a secret plan. Each time the masseuse visited, Lisa discreetly gave her some of her possessions for safekeeping, making sure Simon didn't suspect a thing. On July 28, Simon left his laptop behind in the rush, an unusual mistake since he always carried it with him. Seizing the opportunity, Lisa accessed the laptop and discovered her worst fears. She found a spyware program that allowed Simon to monitor all the data from her phone. Lisa was discovered recordings of her conversations with her mother and surveillance footage from cameras in every room of their apartment. Fearing for her well-being, Lisa used the masseuse's phone to call her mother and ask her to get on the next flight to her apartment and take she home. However, Joanna was unable to leave work immediately, as she had to arrange a shift swap with a colleague. Joanna would later deeply regret the delay this. Upon returning home, Simon quickly discovered that Lisa had accessed his laptop and seen the spyware. Lisa broke down in tears, struggling to understand why she deserved to be treated this way. However, Simon justified his actions, saying they were for her own good. The following day, July 29th, a heated conversation took place between Simon and Lisa, which was later presented in court as evidence. During this conversation, Lisa became emotional and asked if she could go home. In contrast, Simon remained calm and spoke with confidence, assuring her that returning home was not an option. He then told Lisa to calm down and suggested that she had mental issues. On the morning of July 30th, 2011, Lisa woke up early, dressed neatly, and put papers and necessary items in her purse. Before leaving, she locked herself in the bathroom to make a disturbing phone call to her mother. During the call, Lisa said her mother that if anything were to happen to her, her fiancé, Simon, would be responsible. Lisa's intention was to exit the apartment without waking Simon, but she was unsuccessful. The incidents that followed are unclear, and the incident details remain a mystery. However, neighbors reported hearing a scream in the hallway, which stopped abruptly before they could react. Just 1 minute later, a young woman, later confirmed to be Lisa, fell from the balcony of the 15th floor in her fatal crash to the ground below. She landed on the ground, where she died instantly from her severe injuries. Several people on the street saw this happen, but it occurred so quickly that they didn't have time to fully understand the situation. However, one eyewitness, a man who was walking his dog nearby, provided more details. He said that he heard a noise and looked up to see a man holding something large. This man then dropped the object, which turned out to be Lisa. 3 minutes later, Simon, dressed in his pajamas, ran into the street, overcome with tears. He expressed despair about his future, insisting he had been too late to stop Lisa. Initially, the situation seemed like an accident, but Simon swiftly contradicted this assumption, announced that Lisa had ended her own life. Further investigation revealed a cryptic note in Simon's pocket and a disturbing video recording further complicated the situation. After the body Lisa was brought to the morgue and examined, some clues have been found. Upon searching the pockets, investigators found fragments of a torn note containing the message, "There are cameras everywhere in the apartment." It's likely that Lisa had broken the note into small pieces and scattered them across different pockets to prevent Simon from finding them. Further investigation revealed that the apartment indeed had multiple cameras, but the hard drive containing the footage was missing. However, Simon maintained that there were no video recordings at all. A surveillance camera in the apartment's hallway recorded a disturbing scene. Approximately 1 minute before Lisa's fatal fall, the footage shows her desperately running out of the apartment and calling for help. However, Simon quickly grabs her from behind, covers her mouth, and forcibly drags her back inside. This incident is believed to be connected to the scream heard by the neighbors. Investigators also discovered evidence on Simon's laptop, including a recorded conversation he and Lisa had the night before her death, as well as spyware software he used to secretly monitor her activities. Simon stated that he and Lisa had a disagreement that morning, resulting in her becoming hysterical. She initially fled to the hallway, screaming, but he calmed her down by bringing her back inside, fearing a scene in front of the neighbors. Moments later, as Simon was about to call Lisa's mother on the phone, Lisa went out to the balcony and fell. Simon claimed that Lisa once mentioned ending her own life, but he had not taken her threat seriously. He explained that his decision to install spyware was largely driven by his genuine concern for Lisa's well-being and safety. During the trial, Simon was accompanied by his new girlfriend, Rachel Louise, 22 years old, a model who bore a striking resemblance to Lisa. However, it was later suggested that Rachel simply wanted to make a name for herself through this case, so she was willing to talk to the press and appear on television, claiming Simon would never harm a woman. Meanwhile, Simon's lawyers presented a defense that suggested Lisa had a history of mental health struggles, including anxiety and anorexia, for which she had received treatment at a clinic. They imply that these things were the cause of her death. The defense argued that Simon was of short stature, so he could not have lifted Lisa himself, because she was taller than him, thus he would not have been able to throw her off the balcony. However, a trainer from Simon's gym disputed this claim, stating that Simon lifts heavy weights, so he is much stronger than he looks and can easily lift Lisa. This assertion was supported by the absence of Lisa's fingerprints on the railing and glass barrier, suggesting she could not have jumped on her own as she would have needed to lean on them. The physiotherapist who had treated Lisa took the stand, providing crucial testimony about the abuse Lisa had suffered and the items she had left behind in an attempt to escape. This testimony played a crucial role in the trial. As a result, Simon Gidney was convicted of murdering his fiancée, Lisa Harnham, and sentenced to 26 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 years. Following the verdict, Rachel Louise became enraged, insulting the judge, and was subsequently removed from the courtroom. Simon and his lawyers made multiple attempts to contest the court's ruling, but they were unsuccessful, and the original verdict stood. Following the verdict, Rachel broke up with Simon. She said in an interview that they found it difficult to maintain a relationship because he was in prison, although she continues to believe in Simon's innocence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Marie Carlson. In 1974, a girl named Marie was born into an ordinary Filipino family. Concerned about her future, Marie's mother decided to send her to the United States, hoping her daughter would have a better chance at success. Marie was eventually adopted by an American military family who already had a daughter named Esther. The two girls, close in age, quickly became friends, unaware of their true relationship. Marie lived in a foster home, not knowing that her American father was her biological father. Meanwhile, Esther, the friend with whom Marie shared her games, secrets, and dreams, was actually her biological sister. Neither of them realized their blood relationship. As the two girls grew up, they decided to leave their parents' home to start a new life together in Florida. They rented a cozy apartment near a karaoke club, which quickly became their favorite SPO. Marie Carlson had an optimistic outlook on life. She loved the color pink and often used the word beautiful as a guiding principle. In Marie's beautiful world, a new meaning suddenly appeared. It was love. Marie entered a new chapter in her life when she met Jeff. They quickly fell in love, started dating, and eventually got married. Their love was symbolized by the birth of a beautiful daughter, named Paris, reflecting the love and beauty they shared. However, Jeff remained a mysterious man, with a past and family members that Marie knew nothing about. While Marie's personal life was going smoothly, she set a lofty career goal of working for the FBI. To prepare for this challenging job, she began studying criminal law. However, her path to pursuing her dream was fraught with difficulties. Every step forward in her career required great effort. In the end, despite her best efforts, Marie left the police force without accomplishing her original goal. Marie's life, which had been why before, gradually became difficult due to a mental disorder. The root cause was severe sexual abuse she had suffered since childhood, leaving deep psychological trauma. Over time, the mental disorder became more severe, making Marie's daily life a painful ordeal. The trauma of the past had a serious impact on Marie. It not only made her lose her self-esteem but also weakened her feelings for her husband, Jeff. Their once passionate love had cooled down and was filled with disappointment. Unable to overcome the difficulties in their marriage, they decided to divorce, feeling exhausted by the pain they had gone through. The divorce, the failure of her police career, and unsuccessful attempts to find a new job took a toll on Marie. She realized that she could no longer be a good mother to her daughter. To protect Paris from the negative environment, Marie and Jeff, who cared deeply for their daughter, agreed that Jeff would have custody of her. Despite their difficult past, the divorced couple completed their divorce smoothly. Despite the lengthy legal process, both of them tried their best for their little daughter, Paris. The divorce did not cause a rift between Jeff and Marie. They remained friends, and Jeff was always there to support Marie when needed. Marie also tried to see her daughter as often as possible and never missed her birthday. Marie was searching for meaning in life. Despite the hardships she went through, she did not give up. One day, she realized that she needed faith. Marie began attending the Emerald Coast Church founded by James Flanders. From the very first words of his simple and sincere sermon, she felt welcomed and loved. Marie began her new journey in Redemption, a town in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. James and James's colleague, Tanya Flanders, were two kind people who spread warmth to everyone around them with their kindness. They built a church called the Shrine of Mercy, where people could seek help and support. One day, they helped Marie, who was having a hard time in life. For Marie, the church was not only a place of prayer but also became her real home. This place was filled with love, and people were always willing to help each other. Marie found a new family, surrounded by warm affection. She felt free like a bird that had just escaped from a cage. As the days passed, Marie gradually regained her joy in life. Her heart was filled with happiness, and a smile was always on her lips. Marie's eyes shone with new hope, reflecting not only the gentle Florida sunshine. Her health and weight improved, and her soul was filled with happiness. The church was not only a place of worship but also a caring community. Here, Marie found a second family full of love, light, and faith. On the outside, the church looked simple and humble, blending in with other urban structures. Inside, the space was cozy with simple pews. Here, time seemed to stand still, and people were united by their common faith. But, one day, Marie was pregnant. A secret she kept hidden under her loose-fitting dress. She felt ashamed and afraid, sharing it only with a few of her closest friends. In June 2021, at the age of 37, Marie gave birth to her second daughter, Grace. The news quickly spread throughout the small town. The truth about the child's father turned out to be heartbreaking. It was a man Marie had dated for a short time. He had abused her physically and mentally. When he learned that Marie was pregnant, he left without saying goodbye. After experiencing the deep trauma of abandonment, Marie found comfort and new hope in the church. There, she always received strong support. The Flanders family became loyal protectors, surrounding Marie and her young daughter Grace with care and love. They became the real family Marie had always dreamed of. She realized that she was no longer alone. After 3 months since Marie had given birth to her daughter. This should have been a time filled with joy and happiness, but Marie made a shocking decision. She posted a surprise announcement on social media. She was leaving. Not just leaving, Marie decided to cut all ties, leaving behind the city, family, and friends. Marie kept her plans a secret, not wanting anyone to doubt or interfere. She only casually mentioned her dream and expressed her feelings to her family, as if saying goodbye forever. No one knew where she was going or what she was doing. She suddenly disappeared without a trace, leaving her family extremely worried and desperate. They did not know what to do to find her. Marie's mysterious disappearance only added to their anxiety. Jeff, Marie's ex-husband, was worried when his ex-wife went missing. He decided to call the police to look for her. As each day passed, the fear of Marie's fate increased. While everyone was still talking about Marie's disappearance from Fort Walton Beach, a terrifying truth was revealed. She had left without taking her 3-month-old daughter. Marie's sister Esther immediately became suspicious. "It's not like her at all," she said, her voice shaking. She was always protective of her child. Everyone who knew Marie was shocked. She was a model mother, always tenderly caring for 7-year-old Paris. Marie's ex-husband, Jeff, was also surprised to learn that she had stopped caring to Paris. The police could not ignore the incident. When they examined Marie's recent messages, they discovered something unusual. Her writing style was very different from her previous ones. This made them suspect that Marie might have been coerced or that someone was impersonating her. An investigation was launched. Suspicions arose about the ex-boyfriend of her, due to Marie's relationship with this man seemed to be bad. Marie's disappearance remains a mystery. Even Marie's sister Esther has been unable to confirm or deny theories about the case. Police are investigating many complex aspects, including Marie's disappearance, strange text messages, and questions about ex-boyfriend of her. In INT reviews with the police, Tanya and James Flanders provided additional information. They said Marie had gone missing before, often leaving for periods of time and returning without explanation. The family also revealed that Marie suffered from bipolar disorder, which may have caused her sudden mood swings. A few weeks before her disappearance, Marie had fallen into a state of depression. She had started taking medication but had to stop because she was pregnant. Feeling unwell, Marie asked the Flanders to look after her daughter. After lunch, Marie went to rest, while Tanya and Grace went shopping. James came to look after Marie, but when he came, Marie and her car were nowhere to be found. The Flanders immediately began searching. They searched the streets and checked the parking lots of every building. James suddenly had the idea to check the airport. To his surprise, they found Marie's car there. James drove home with the spare key. The investigators immediately checked the car, but FOUND no traces or suspicious evidence. In search of new information, they decided to go to the airport where Marie had left. Their plan was to review the security camera footage in the parking lot. The airport was responsible for storing this information. If they were lucky, they might find Marie's plane ticket, which might have her fingerprints on it. Although they found Marie's ticket, it was of no help to the investigation because there were no important traces on it. Marie's search efforts at the airport did not yield the expected results. A search of her car also turned up no clues, and the parking ticket had no fingerprints. Additionally, the security cameras in the parking lot were not working on the day Marie went missing, making the situation even more difficult. The police are focusing on the mysterious man who is the ex-boyfriend of Marie. Investigators returned to the church in the hope of finding clues about the father's identity and role in this complicated case. The church is abuzz with speculation about where Marie sought solace in the past. Parishioners have revealed Marie's dealing with her grief. She was struggling with depression and considering abortion. However, the Flanders were against the decision. They asked Marie to keep the baby and promised to help her. The Flanders' eldest child was grown, but they were desperate for another child. Even though they were in their 40s, they were still eager for the chance to become parents again. Once again, a parishioner declared Grace a gift from heaven and was a reward for the Flanders' kindness in helping Marie. Then, Jeff, Marie's ex-husband, appeared. Although he was not the baby's father, he held an important clue. Jeff revealed that he had noticed Marie was pregnant. When asked about the baby's father, Marie lied and said she was a surrogate mother for the Flanders. So who really was Grace's father? As the investigation deepened, investigators interviewed Tanya's close friends, who were also members of the church, to learn more about the case. Initially, these friends promised Marie to keep the information confidential, but eventually, all the women were forced to reveal the truth. They all confirmed that James was Grace's biological father. It turned out to be a natural pregnancy, and James' wife, Tanya, had to accept the situation silently. This attracted the attention of investigators, leading to the Flanders family being called in for further questioning. Only Tanya appeared and confirmed the information, revealing that she had been in the room when the incident occurred. She described it as having happened with the consent of all parties involved. Tanya emphasized that the important thing in this situation was the relationship between people and higher goals, not the physical aspect. After Marie's disappearance, more terrifying information about the relationship between her, James, and Tanya gradually emerged. In fact, James not only had an affair but also had a parallel relationship with both women, similar to a form of polygamy. Once, they even celebrated the child's birthday together and took a photo, in which James, Tanya, and Marie posed as a happy family. This photo was intended to prove that the ceremony was only to honor Tanya, not related to Marie. However, after investigation and interviews with Tanya's friends, new information came to light that clarified the situation. Although Tanya said Marie was satisfied with her current relationship, the reality changed after Grace was born. Marie's maternal feelings rose strongly, making it impossible for her to easily give up her daughter. According to Marie's friends, she began to be jealous of Tanya. They suspected that Marie did not want to give Grace to Tanya and intended to win James back. These accusations immediately made Tanya the prime suspect. If Marie disappeared, all of Tanya's problems would be solved. She would have the chance to raise Grace alone and continue to be James' beloved wife. It has been 2 months since Marie went missing, but no more clues have been found. Investigators have used many methods, including GPS, to find her. However, in 2011, GPS technology was not yet fully developed, so they had to rely heavily on call and text data from mobile phones. The only thing they know for sure is that Marie was at the airport with James, but not Tanya. Later, Jason, a young priest, came to the police station. He had spoken on behalf of James many times, and one day he decided to speak directly to the investigators. Jason recounted a conversation he had overheard. Shortly after Marie's disappearance, James expressed his sadness and concern. He said that he would have to leave the country because of Marie's disappearance but could not reveal the details. James only mentioned that something terrible had happened during the time when Marie was severely depressed. During that period, James stayed with Marie at the clinic for a few days, while Jason temporarily replaced him. Rumors of Pastor James' illicit relationship spread among the parishioners, and Jason was shocked to learn about James' polygamy. Jason directly asked him about his relationship with Marie. James frankly admitted that he had had sex with both Marie and his wife. James said that he and Marie had argued and fought shortly before she went missing, but he insisted that Marie was still alive when she disappeared. After this conversation, James decided to resign from his pastoral duties and quickly left the city with his family, including Tanya and Grace, to move to Arizona. Recently, Marie's family contacted the Flanders family to retrieve some of her belongings. As a result, investigators seized Marie's phone, which may have contained important information. Although most of the data had been deleted, some of it was recovered. They also found a video of James advertising precious metals on the phone, which aroused the investigators' suspicions. In 2011, committing a crime was easier than it is today. Surveillance cameras were not common, and digital traces could quickly disappear. DNA detection technology was just beginning to develop, making it easier for criminals to get away with their crimes. However, thanks to the development of digital forensics, this case may be solved. 3 years after Marie's disappearance, new software was developed that could recover data from phones and computers. Thanks to this, it was possible to recover messages between Marie and James. These messages showed a completely different side of James. The couple exchanged sensitive pictures, even taken in church. In a final email to James, Marie expressed her desire to leave Fort Walton Beach and not leave her child in what she called a cursed place. The secrets that the Flanders family had kept for so long were exposed. In desperation, James and his lawyer decided to take their last chance. They proposed a deal. If James revealed the location of the victim's body, he would only be charged with manslaughter, which carries a lighter sentence. Marie's family, after years of pain and suffering, agreed to the deal. They just wanted to know the truth and find peace of mind. James shares details about his relationship with Marie and the hardships they went through. Marie suffered from depression, which caused many arguments between them. During one argument, Marie pushed James, and when he tried to calm her down, she accidentally fell to the ground and lost consciousness. This was a fateful moment in their lives. James realized the seriousness of the situation when Marie's heart stopped beating. Although he tried to save her, Marie eventually passed away. This incident left James with deep remorse and regret. After years of fruitless searching, investigators finally found Marie's body in James Flanders' yard. The body was wrapped in a blanket and buried 5 feet underground, only discovered when James showed them the exact location. The discovery shocked everyone involved in the case. James Flanders was sentenced to 15 years in prison for manslaughter, with the possibility of parole after 11 years. His wife, Tanya, was apparently unaware of her husband's crimes and was in complete shock at Marie's death. This was confirmed by a witness, who was later revealed to be the Flanders family's lawyer. Had Marie's body been discovered earlier, experts could have determined the cause of death, which could have affected the investigation. After 5 years, Marie was finally laid to rest at her funeral. It is possible that her sister Esther sang a farewell song for her. However, the fate of little Grace remains a mystery. Currently, Grace lives with her foster mother, Tanya Flanders, in Arizona.